think you ought to know. Do-do-what-it-up, Men's Radio. Do-do-what-it-up, the place where men and women really speak. Do-do-what, do-do-do-what. Oh man, what a show. Do-do-what-it-up. It's Men's Radio. Do-do-what-it-up. This crazy show is on 3 times a week. Do-do-what, do-do-do-what. Now Russ and Phil are there to help with all your cares. We laugh, we cry, we talk like grown-ups do. But if you're sad and low, do-do-what-it-up. It won't cost you no dough. Do-do-what-it-up. Men's Radio, that's the place for you. With Russ Kane and Phil Dave.
It's Friday!
Oh, thank God. Why? What's happening at the weekend? You going out? You got plans? You got a party? Going clubbing? What are you doing?
Now I know you're not well. Because you have never, in all the time I've known you, have never said the words, thank God.
Yeah, it was postmodern irony. Hey, I'm sorry, in case you thought I'd overslept or something, as per usual, the Tinternet, provided by BT, the world's just garbage. It's just absolute garbage. I was doing a late night interview as well on another radio station last night, talking about Men's Radio Station, which is very kind of them. Do you know Talk Radio, Phil? Have you heard of it? TALK, Talk Radio.
I look it up.
Mr. R.
I'll look it up. It sounds vaguely familiar. But yeah. All is okay with the world because I've had a salted rice cake and I've got a red bush, so I'm happy.
If you think I'm falling into that comedy bear trap, you can think again, you dirty swine. Kimmy Lashmar, hello everyone. Ed Grossman, do-wah. Andrea Lucas.
Thank you, baked potato.
Timing is everything. Morning, thought you were on your own. Glad Russ had joined. No. The computer had to be restarted at the very last minute. I was here in good time. Very happy Thursday, everybody, says Ed Grossman. What are you doing for Christmas Day today? I'm surprised you're watching. Now, Barry J. Allen, a.k.a. Flash, hello, and thanks for last night's show. What he's referring to is a show which has become a runaway hit, much to my thrilled surprise. It's called The ABC of CBD with Oliver Mammon, sponsored by the Tincture Club. And the viewing and listening figures for that are fantastic. And Barry, who shared something, did you know he'd had a brain tumor?
Pardon?
He shared that last night. Barry Allen had a brain tumor operation 3 years ago. A very brave man. So he was asking for some sort of advice and stuff about his sleep patterns. Mark J.W. Thomas.
What does the J.W. stand for?
I have no idea. Julie Walters. Mark,
cool.
Julie Walters, Thomas. What do you think? I don't know. Good morning, both. Have a great show. Sounding great on Deluxe Radio. You better explain why, Philip Dave of No Fixed Abode.
How very kind of you. So far, you've referred to Oliver Mammon. You've referred to Philip Dave. I'm slightly worried that we're in trouble. You're referring to all of the presenting staff by our full names. We should be most concerned. Anyway, to those who are listening, by the way, on Deluxe Radio, you are most welcome. This is The Daily Show with him, Ross Kane, and me, Phil Dave. Now, on a Friday, we are live with you until 2 o'clock this afternoon. So just in case you thought you were only going to stick around for an hour, think again. Thank you very much indeed. Of course, you may also be watching live, including the visuals on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and you're most welcome wherever you are, even if you're just listening on mensradiostation.com. Here's a novel idea. Listen through our website, why don't you?
Crazy.
Ridiculous prospect.
Crazy. Now, I've got to do some tech stuff, and you're going to chat.
I see. Okay, well, in that case, whilst you're
I'll
doing...
be here. You can see me, but I've got to concentrate on a couple of little stupid tech things because of this machine. I nearly said something which so desperately rude.
Well, I would like to reassure you that I think that I will find it within me to carry on talking. But coming up on today's program,
I know it's a big thing for you. This is your.
Oh, his internet's going.
This is incredible. Don't tell me it's gone again.
Well, it's going a little bit funny. It's all right. You're sounding a little bit robotic. Don't worry. You're okay. You're still here. That's the main thing. Look, do you know what? As we ever increase the date and time in front of us in 2021, I actually think that the more robotic you sound, the more longevity you've got in this world.
Why?
So don't worry about it. Well, because robots
Why?
appear to be slowly but surely taking over already.
Can't bear it. I don't know what's the matter with it. The system is just... Go on, off you go.
Know you should. Why don't you donate your laptops to one of those laptop amnesties, as it were? You know, the ones that they're trying to round up a load of machinery for school pupils working from home.
Really?
I think you just donate your laptop to one of them.
Do you think it's dying on me?
Well, I don't know. I mean, when I checked its pulse the other day, it seemed okay. Woody Woodpecker. Coming up on this program, by the way, in a matter of minutes, I'm hastened to add, we'll be speaking to Harriet Gridley. Now, Harriet is UK Director of No Isolation. You can pretty much have a guess of what No Isolation is.
What's it about, do you think?
I was going to say, but
I don't know. No,
by the
way, Joseph William, Mark J.W. Thomas, Joseph William.
Oh, good work.
Just for the sake of completion, you know.
No, we're very pleased about that. Coming up at midday today, Tony Harding, by the way, who is the MD of Momentum SPK. He's a business consultant, a mentor, problem solver, cancer and kidney research advocate. He's a very clever chap. He's going to
just say the word momentum on my radio station?
Well, we're going to redefine that word to something more positive, let me tell you.
Has ever a word been hijacked and made poo? The word momentum.
Yes, well, he's from a good sort of momentum.
Yeah, good sort of momentum, not Nazis. Anyway, there we go.
From midday. Then at 1 o'clock this afternoon, Andre Radmal will join us, and he is a psychotherapist and life coach. And as if all of that isn't enough, at 1:30, as usual, we joined.
What a show this is!
It's busier than Piccadilly Circus. No, it really is busy than Piccadilly Circus, because I drove past it the other day and there's no one there. But anyway, so Chantal Rickards, OBE, will join us at 1:30 to give us some inspiration of what's on the box. So all of that is coming up on the Daily Show.
Well, good luck with it. I'm quite busy today. I'm going to go back to bed now.
Oh,
anyway,
okay.
Have a great show. It's been lovely seeing you. And what more do you want?
Well, might I just say thank you for popping in? I really appreciate your time.
Hey, I happen to be in the area.
Yeah,
it is so screwed up, my computer. I tell you what I'm trying to do. This is kind of boring nonsense, but what I'm trying to do is to share the feed onto my Facebook site. And it's amazing. I cannot comment as it's so screwed up. I can't even share it. Which I normally do, but I can't even seem to do that. So, all right, I'm giving that idea up. It's pants.
Don't worry, I'm sure everyone feels so much happy for knowing that.
Yeah, it's good. It's good stuff. People like to know these things.
Well, I was going to say, do you know what? I don't think anyone wants to know that we are the faultless production that we give the impression we are.
Oh, they know we're silky smooth. They know that we are silky smooth, baby. Anywho, yeah, my sleep. Oh, I found big news for me. Big news. Are you still there? I'm looking at something else now.
Am I still here?
I'm looking at something else. I can't see it.
Sorry, is this a Yentel moment? Papa, can you hear me? No, we're here. We can hear you.
Today, it's all too much, baby. I found. Hey, guess what? I found a Poirot that I hadn't seen before. I was so thrilled. I found a Poirot that I had not. There we go. All right, I'm now back-ish.
I absolutely love it when that happens, because I also love Poirot, as you well know. And as far as I'm concerned, I feel like I've seen every single one of them, but clearly I haven't. Because once in a while I do come across the odd one. Though I will say one thing, I don't like it when it doesn't have Hastings in, and there were rather a lot without him.
I asked David why. You see the way I segued that in? And we had dinner one evening, and I said, David, why are we now watching Poirot without Hastings? Because I love Hastings. And he said, oh, that's because Agatha Christie in the later, David and I, we all grew up together, the Suchets, and we were all very, very close as families. My mum and dad and their mum and dad, that was Jack and Joe. And even David Suchet's grandmother, Elsie. We were very close. Fantastic family. We used to go on holiday together and everything. Just friends. And Agatha Christie, of course, the greatest crime writer of all time, without doubt, wrote those books later. It wasn't that the actor wasn't available or they tried to change the script. He wasn't in those stories. It moved on. So he remarried in the storyline. Arthur Hastings, Captain Hastings, remarried and went back to South America. So there we are. We've been joined by somebody. Eve Phantom, crazy name, crazy gal. Good morning, friends. A bit pushy, isn't it? A bit pushy. You know what I mean? A bit pushy. Yeah. Martin Allen's got the box set, I presume, of Poirot, and watch them.
Nice.
I often say, when you like to be sitting there going, Miss Lemon, a tisson, s'il vous plaît. If I do that, the dog's not going to bring me a tisson. What is a tisson, by the way? You know everything.
I'm not entirely sure. But what I would say is that I find it absolutely fascinating that there are certain words that Poirot just sneaks in his French here and there, as if it's almost sort of clever, but it's almost not clever at the same time, because I sort of do it myself, implying that there is some sort of fluency there in the language by just sneaking in the most commonly used words in that language. So, for example, he'll say something like maintenant, or he'll say merci. You know, it's just like these really sort of simple words he throws in, and yet everything else is in English, even if he's conversing with another conversing even with another Belgian. Yes,
it is good. The French and Belgian. It's so beautifully done. His creation of Poirot. I'm sorry, it just makes everybody else just look like sort of amateur dramatics. He's having his red bush tea. Yeah, he's having it there. That is what he's drinking.
Oh, I see. Was that your vague attempt at a South African accent?
Go on. Show us how it's done.
Well,
Come on.
I don't know why you'd think for a second that I'd be able to pull off a South African accent. Maybe it's because half my family come from there, yeah. Any odd way. No, I'm not going to. You'll be delighted to hear I'm not going to do the rest of the program with a South African accent. Instead, we're now going to dive straight into our first subject.
Are you kidding? I'm not even ready. I haven't mentally prepared myself. I'm geared up.
Well, luckily, Harriet...
with my cadence of my emails, my cadence. Go on.
Let me ask you something that might come across as a bit personal. Were you dropped on the head as a baby by any chance? I'm just putting it out there. Anyway, right, I'm delighted to say, though, that luckily Harriet Gridley is most certainly ready.
I don't think I was wanted.
Sitting in our digital green room, looking suitably horrified at what lies ahead.
Hey, stop. How was the catering today? Because I changed the caterers for the digital green room. I hope it's better now.
Oh, I see. I don't know, actually. I'm hoping that Harriet's going to tell us this. Harriet's a very... Oh, dear, right. I thought... She's very... We'll come back. I gave her that massive build-up as well. Don't worry.
Well, she's gone now. Probably popped to the loo. Ed Grossman says, Russ, all those stories... What?
Let's say hello to Harriet Gridley, who joins us now. Harriet, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
That's a strange name to have, and how appropriate. Harriet, is that the Surrey no isolations or the Sussex no isolations? Which would that be?
No Isolation is our company name. I'm Harriet Gridley.
Right, okay.
Harriet Gridley, we're very happy to have you here. Please tell us, to anyone who may not have heard of No Isolation, and shame on you if you haven't, but don't worry, we're about to rectify that. Please tell us what No Isolation does.
Sure thing, Phil. So No Isolation is a Norwegian company founded about 5 years ago now to reduce social isolation and loneliness. And so we develop warm technology to help those afflicted by social isolation. So we have a small robot for children who are too unwell to go to school.
Wow. Serious? Beady beady. What was that? Buck Rogers in the 25th century. Beady beady. You've got a robot? Seriously, got a robot? You're kidding us. You could tell us anything. We are that stupid, Harriet. You could
We do.
Make
we have
it
a small robot.
Oh dear. What a time for Harriet's internet to play up. Right, we'll get Harriet back in just a moment. Don't worry, it's fine. She will return to us, fear not.
A small robot. but they got crap.
I was going to say, I think that's small robots playing mischief, actually. Small robots.
We had Metal Mickey. Come on, gang, play along. We had Metal Mickey, which was Mickey Dolentz's. He produced that show, Metal Mickey.
Oh, I know. WD-40. No, R2-D2. That's the one.
No, I was thinking of the TV show. I wasn't thinking of Star Wars. We had Metal Mickey, and then in Buck Rogers in the 21st Century, we had Tweaky.
What about Rosie from the Jetsons?
Me, George Jetson. Hey, I don't know if you saw. You know, I love The Chase. So yesterday,
It's all about the thrill of the chase for you.
It's all about the chase. Yesterday, my pal, Susie Kennedy, world's best Marilyn Monroe impersonator, and she's also my neighbour. So big showbiz news. We meet in the Tesco's car park. Couldn't make this crap up, could you? It's true. And Susie Kennedy was on The Chase. She did fantastically well. 43 grand she got.
It was when she started singing Happy Birthday to the Beast I got a bit freaked out.
It was, who was it? It was Sean. Yes, she did really, really, really well. She was great on TV. Such a nice girl.
And you know, Sean Wallace is without doubt one of the nicest people. You know, he comes across.
Have you met him?
We met him by accident once at the British Television Awards. My family and I, you'll see. Just thought I'd drop it in there.
Sorry, what were you doing? I don't even want to ask. Where's our guest gone? She seemed really nice.
He's coming now. You know what? You're just going to have to wait a bit longer to find out what happened at the British Television Awards, because I'm delighted to say that Harriet's technology has now been repaired and she's back. Hello, Harriet.
Hello. Sorry.
Can I have a small picture of me? There we go.
Harriet, can I reassure you that Russ has this battle on a daily basis with his internet? And so it's fine. In an age where we need the internet more than ever, isn't it incredible to think how rubbish the internet is for so many people?
Shocking. It is absolute pants. I think it's because so many people are on it the entire time, and it probably just can't take the bandwidth. Hey,
yes.
Now, wait a minute. When we last left, before you disappeared into the Twilight Zone, you said that you had warm technology. You have to explain what that means to two idiots. And then you said you had little robots. And we're loving it. You had us at robots.
So warm technology, we're not in the business of making radiators or anything like that.
Okay.
But
just the point,
the product
radiators.
If you were in the business of fixing boilers, you would be a multi-squillionaire, let me tell you that.
But warm technology is actually a term that we've coined to describe products which can facilitate human contact when you can't physically be there due to illness or ability. And so it's a niche term, but particularly beneficial, especially during this pandemic.
It might be a niche term, but I have to tell you, I mean, in one of my other jobs is that I'm nicknamed the Chic Geek, which means that when I'm on radio, sometimes when I'm not talking about sensible things like this, I talk about my love of technology. So I am beyond excited at the prospect of looking at this further, because to me, I think warm technology, what a terrific phrase to coin. I love it.
Yeah, it is exciting. We're still only 5 years into our journey, and so there's a lot more products that we want to make. But how it works is we choose.
Can you give us an insight as to sort of maybe what's up your sleeve? Obviously, if it's patented, we don't want you to give anything away.
We're suddenly in an episode of Tomorrow's World. Boom, 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 boom.
Tomorrow's World walking a countdown.
It could be anything. It could be anything. But I mean, I ask the question to you: who do you think in society is particularly socially isolated?
Phil Dave has no friends, and you've met him for 3 minutes now. You know why. Who's completely isolated? Elderly people. Elderly people, agoraphobics, not being sarcastic, agoraphobics, elderly people who are simply unwell.
No, I beg to differ. Do you know who I believe are the most isolated personally? I think it's people who are homeless, living on the street. I think they're the most isolated personally. Because you've got to think of it like this. So those who are elderly, they may not have a real grasp of how technology works. But by and large, there are services out there that means that older people can be given access to technology and can be shown it. But when it comes to homeless people, it's not like they're living anywhere that so they have a stable internet connection where they can connect to how many people they want to and just look up something. If they've got information that they need, they are one of the few types of people in this world now who actually can't look up anything. They haven't got.
I'm going to throw out a wild idea. Why don't we let our fabulous guest answer the question?
Hey, we were asked a question. I'm just
Asking it back
the
on me.
question? Harriet, no isolation with no hyphen, didn't say, "Hey, Phil, do a 20-minute lecture, please, at the Royal Geographic Society."
I think you're both right. I think, well, I don't think
Yeah,
successful.
we like
There
you.
isn't a group who is the most socially isolated. But the fact is, the moment you ask that question, we can all think of perhaps the elderly is the first to come to mind. But then, as Phil mentioned, the homeless. There's also the families of prisoners or new parents. People like me living in a big city, surrounded by people, but currently I'm not interacting with people that much.
You'll be around in 20 minutes. Your luck is in. Your life's about to change, Harriet. A charming young guy. I'm going to go and buy a hat straight away.
So there's many different groups, and we haven't, mapped out who we will design a product for next. But if you want, I can tell you about our 2 products that we have today.
Yes, please.
Absolutely.
We love that.
Okay, cool. So the first is called AV1, and it's designed specifically for children who are diagnosed with a long-term illness. Now that could be cancer, but it could also be anxiety. There's a lot of reasons why kids can't go to school. And it's about this big, and it sits on the desk of a child who can't physically be there. And from an app on their phone or their tablet, the kids can log in and they can actually physically see everything that's there, talk to their teacher, interact with their friends. But it's also portable, so it can go on school trips, it can go to the playground, and wherever that child wants to go, they can be.
Now, how would that thought just a
Wow.
second? This sounds incredible, but it also sounds expensive. What happens to families who can't afford it?
Well, there's
Also
actually
going so well up to that point. Spoil it.
I could tell you that there's more than 500 kids in the UK who are using this today, and many more across Europe. The reason being that actually local councils and schools have a legal obligation to provide an education for kids who can't physically be there. But to date, there hasn't really been a sustainable, cost-effective way for them to do this. So at just £8 a day, AV1 is actually a flexible solution for them, and something which lots of them are adopting.
The mum or dad or auntie or uncle or whatever would take AV1 into the school and leave it there. Have I got this the right way around? Yeah? Leave it there. And then if they went on a school trip, the teacher would pick up the robot and put it in the coach or whatever. So it's them being there virtually, wherever it might be. Or it could go into the playground or... Okay. So what is this, camera? Well, I mean, don't go into the whole tech thing because don't understand. But it's like, well, apart from the fact it's voodoo magic, you could say that and I'd go, okay. What is it? It's cameras, microphones? What's the thing?
Yeah, the tech behind it is actually really simple, and it's things that have existed for a while. There's a camera, a microphone, and a loudspeaker, but it's also got a 4G SIM card integrated and a long battery life, and all of this combined makes it the perfect tool for the school because it's secure, it's encrypted, but it also gives the child the opportunity to engage meaningfully in the education without them being on show. Because quite often they're in their pajamas or they might have a feeding tube. So it's only a one-way video stream.
Okay.
But hang on a second then. So what happens if, let's say, for example, that in a classroom environment, if a child wants to ask a teacher a question, well, then obviously it's quite interactive. They're in person and they are just able to stick up their hand and ask the question. What happens to those children who can't be seen then through this technology?
So we thought about putting an arm on the robot, but we thought that might look a little strange.
I was about to say that, and I thought, even for me, that's stupid. So I didn't say it.
So we ended up going for a button in the app, which the kids can press, that makes the robot's head flash.
Get out.
So in a subtle way, the kids can ask a question like anyone else.
That's terrific, because I mean that's a little bit like my head on a Saturday evening in the good old days when we could go out. My head starts to flash
That was your nose flashing like a Bleacher beacon. was like a warning. It was like a landing light at Heathrow. This is very clever. So that's item number 1. That is the, according to, this must be your chum, Emily Ann Ward. Is she your chum?
She's a good chum, yeah.
The
number
no
one
AV1 robot.
Yes. So if you look up Emily, and well, there we are. She's got this thing where you can go and see it. Which one's Emily in this picture?
I think she's the one on the left.
Okay. I'm quite confused. Okay. All right. Right. Okay. So that's number 1. We like that. I love the fact that it's headlights up. Oh, quick question. I know you said it's got long battery life. Does the teacher? I'm just a meat and potatoes guy. Does the teacher plug it in at night in the classroom, or what happens?
Exactly. So at the end of the school day, they plug it in and charge it, and it's ready to go the next day.
It's amazing. All right, that's number 1. We got dazzle us with number 2.
Well, number 2 is designed for those who don't have existing experience with modern communication tools. So perhaps for those who have never done a video call or have never got on with a smartphone, maybe their family have given them an iPad, but they didn't enjoy it. That's who the second product's designed for.
Okay.
It's called COMP, KOMP, which sort of stems from computer, companionship, communication, and with the Norwegian K. But it's basically a one-button computer for anyone who didn't grow up with modern technology.
Immediately. It's got one button.
I'd like to introduce you to your newest punter.
Look no further. I am actually horribly computer literate. I don't like them.
So, Harry, in all seriousness, sorry, is no isolation? Is it it's an actual company as opposed to a charity, or what? How does the actual structure of No Isolation work?
Yeah, we are a company, but written into our values and in the blood of everyone who works at the company, we believe in always making an impact before making a profit. So everything we do is towards reducing social isolation and loneliness, and making that as sustainable as possible for everyone.
So is this all built in Norway? Does it all start from there and it comes in here, or you've got to set up here? What's the story?
It is actually designed and manufactured in Norway. So we have, good sight of the production process to ensure quality and also, ethics behind how it's all being put together.
Now, does this mean then, in that case, that given this age of COVID that we are living in, where people are obviously having to isolate more than ever, are you busier than ever as a result of this?
Yeah, so it's interesting you ask, because we have, as I said, for 5 years been talking about how dangerous social isolation is for our health. It's proven to be as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases your risk of dementia and heart disease, and yet people still associate it as something, a stigma. No one wants to admit to being lonely, but it's really damaging. Then the pandemic strikes, and actually we find everyone's suddenly aware of what it's like to be socially isolated. So there's an increased empathy. And at the same time, thousands of families up and down the country are unable to see their senior relatives. So we saw a, massive increase in the demand for our product COMP, which enables simple photo sharing and video calls with your elderly relatives.
This all sucks, doesn't it? This isolation. I mean, it just is. It's driving everybody to the edge. There's no two ways about it. It's driving everybody to the edge. I want to broaden the conversation, if I can, Harriet. No isolation, and that is you should have a hyphen. Oh yeah, no isolation. Charming people live up the road. I met them. So back to Poirot. It's It is extraordinary, because I think when we kicked off with this nightmare, it was like, well, you got food on your table, you got a roof over your head, you got Netflix, shut up. And everyone went, yeah, you're right, shut up. A year down the line, everyone's going, if I don't get out soon, if I don't see my family soon, I'm going to start biting the wallpaper, because I'm like half an inch from there myself. It just drives you mad. Every day is Groundhog Day. It is bonkers, isn't it? Absolutely blooming bonkers there. How do people know about your Your I can't remember how I came across you, but because my mind's like a sieve. But I was delighted when I saw it all. How do people come across you? Because I haven't seen it advertised anywhere. So how do people know about no isolation products?
I think people do stumble across kind of case studies of people who have used them. And I think more and more, we actually have a large bank of research on our website into the effects of isolation. And I think since the pandemic as well, we've seen an increase in people searching for research into isolation and landing on our website. But it's super interesting because the actual, the science behind loneliness, obviously it sucks, right? Like I'm also missing my family. Can't wait to have friends round for dinner. But when we actually look
By the way, let me stop you there. Phil only eats fish, so don't make a meat course for him. No, because it'd be embarrassing. You'd be pushing it around the plate, and it just is awkward.
Don't worry.
Awkward moment. We'll just
I'll make a.
Oh, hang on, Phil. I'm trying to help here.
Thank you.
Oil the wheels of life.
Your help is enormously appreciated, I'm quite sure. But I think what's even more enormously appreciated is the great work that Harriet's talking about.
She is. Do you have other machines in the pipeline? Because the two you've described are just great. I just love it. It's like science fiction come to life. So is there other stuff that you could kind of hint at?
By the way, Harriet, are you the innovator? Are you the one who comes up with these ideas?
No. Well, actually, when we design our products, the ideas come from the users. We never assume that we know what the products will look like or should look like. It's what the users tell us they need. But then it's a whole company process where every member of the company comes together and inputs into that design process. In terms of products in the pipeline, at the moment, what we want to do is try to focus our products to make them as accessible and suitable for different user groups. So, how can we make sure comp really suits those with dementia? We've seen it has huge benefits for those with early stage dementia. But what additional features could we make to make that even better? Similarly, for AV1, how can we make it as accessible as possible for children who don't have use of their hands? So using things like eye gaze technology to control the robot would make that more accessible for them.
Wow.
I'm not being funny, but isn't it? It's really, I think it's terrible of me. I don't consider myself a bad person normally, but Kane. But at the same time, when I hear thought processes like that, it makes me realize that I am actually probably not as considerate as I could be, because it didn't even cross my mind. What about someone who can't physically manage the technology? Didn't even dawn on me.
Well, that's why Harriet Gridley gets the big bucks. That's why. She does.
You're touching on a really important point, and I think actually the fact that society quite often thinks about making people who are already doing very well, move faster, be more efficient. We get the latest flashy iPhone, but actually where the real benefits of technology lie is in how they can help those who are faced with adverse challenges, and how can they help them access, simple things like human contact with your family, or attending school. Like, those are key basic rights. And quite often, just to give you an example, have you ever tried to use your phone when wearing gloves?
Yep.
You can't unlock it. It just won't work.
It's impossible. I walked the dog when it was cold, and like the phone would go, oh Christ. So, it's impossible. Then you buy the gloves, which you're got the tips on, rubbish. They don't work either.
Well, exactly. So actually, as we age, we develop thicker skin on the ends of our fingertips. So it's callus fingertips, which don't respond as well to touchscreen. So when you see your elderly relative struggling with the touchscreen, there's a scientific reason, a physical barrier.
Whoa, I swear, like I said, I'm allegedly someone who loves technology and knows about technology. I had no idea that was actually a thing. Of course, I've seen it. I know that those who are older do struggle with it. I just assume it's because they're not touching the right place.
You're not that stupid. I grew up with all this stuff. Hey, let me read this to you, Harriet, because this is how you resonate with people. It's not. It's all it does link all together. And this is from Glassy Amanda, who's a regular. I consider myself a strong person, and I can attest to that over the posts over the years that she does. They're always pretty funny. But I've literally been shielding alone from December, after a month spent in hospital from October to November, and this last week I've really felt the isolation greatly. Yeah, hitting people horribly hard. Go through the callous thing again, because Ed Grossman goes, who knows everything about everything, says, wow, never knew that. So you're saying as you get older, the skin on your fingertips thickens and is therefore less interactive with your smart screen. Is that it?
Yeah, that's correct. And what this basically means is that when we take existing communication tools and we try to adapt them for, niche groups in society who have additional needs or particular challenges, it's not the right approach to take, right? So at No Isolation, we're very we like to always throw away any existing ideas we might have, and we're not the ones who will come up with those ideas. As I said, if you listen to the user groups and you really hear what it is that's most important to them, you'll find out what it is exactly that they need. And from there, you can create a solution. It doesn't have to be super flashy. It doesn't have to have artificial intelligence, but it will hopefully help level the playing field.
I think it only appropriate at this stage to remind people that you are listening to The Daily Show here on Men's Radio Station with him, Russ Kane, and with me, Phil Dave. Our guest is Harriet Gridley from No Isolation. And of course, to those who are listening on either Deluxe Radio, Radio Waves, or mensradiostation.com, you can always watch us in our full Technicolor glory on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, if you so desire. Harriet, one thing that strikes me with all of this is that, I'm sorry, Russ, I'm going to use the S word, society needs to do better when it comes to thinking of those who maybe don't have someone around them, or just they are alone for whatever reason. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that they are homeless or part of the more senior group of citizens. It's just absolutely anybody. Not everyone has someone in their life, and I think now more than ever that's been highlighted to us. But how are we going to make sure that continues? We need to get better at thinking about those who are on their own.
Couldn't agree more. I think that the pandemic, again, there have been some silver linings that have come out of it, in that people have connected with their neighbours, have signed up to volunteer more. But the building blocks of society are those opportunities to connect. We need more spaces to connect with the people around us. We need more events and spaces like this to have conversations and share how we're feeling, and to be honest and open about the experience of social isolation, because it is incredibly natural and normal, and all of us are going through it at some point. But yeah, I think society is something that needs to be protected and supported with technology, and not replaced by technology, but facilitated better through technology.
How do people find out more information if they would like to get in touch, perhaps with No Isolation, or just even look into the products that you guys have?
Yeah, they can find us online, noisolation.com. And they'll find information on AV1 and Comp on there. And also you can read our research on the impacts of social isolation. But we always love to have a chat. And if anyone's got any ideas, please do get in touch.
Oh God, you've opened a can of worms now, Harriet. With our listeners all over the world. But they're listening from Mallorca as well now. Martin Bell, morning, Martin. How are you? He says, Mallorca is listening.
Well, that's quite the statement. So there you go, Harry. You're playing out across New York. Thank you for speaking to us and for highlighting the great work that you guys are doing, because it's incredibly important. And yeah, like I said, I'm slightly ashamed I haven't thought more about it.
You cover yourself in shame, she geek. Harriet, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. I think your work that you're doing is fantastic. Terrific.
Likewise.
How exciting.
Thank you.
We're not exciting. We just asked about. But what you're doing is really It's important stuff. I tell you why it's extra important. Sorry, Phil. I know we're dashing on, but I was watching a long interview with what's his name, Snowden. The guy who lives in Russia now. And what's his first name? Phil Snowden, the traitorous guy.
What?
The American guy, Snowden, who turned in all the secrets and now lives in Moscow.
Edward.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Edward Snowden. Thank you. I was watching a documentary last night. I don't sleep, as everyone knows. And of course, what you're doing, you've touched on something. I don't know if you realize how smart it was. Thanks, Ramsey. Edward Snowden, yeah. Of course, he's saying that with all the technology, we have no freedom. Basically, I'm just condensing what the documentary was kind of about. And what you're saying is, no, the technology is there to aid you, not to trap you, not to, trace you, not to follow you around with your digital. It's there to enhance your life rather than sort of corral your life. And it's a very interesting point that you made. I thought.
I totally agree, and also that's something which at No Isolation we believe that your social connection shouldn't have to be paid for with your privacy of your data.
Hours conversation. We're going to have
yeah, that's a whole other topic.
We want you and your pal who's in the picture as well. We should have you both back on to discuss. That's a huge issue.
I hate to tell you, this is only a 3-hour show, but anyway.
No, we can't do it today. Harriet, thank you so much. Thank you for being
Thanks for having me on.
Yes, and also on behalf of Phil and I, thank you for not having bookshelves in the background.
Oh yes, I mean, who can have bookshelves behind them?
What idiot would have bookshelves behind them? Harriet, have a lovely day. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well,
everything.
Bye. Oh, there you go. Terrific, Harriet.
Charming guest.
Isolation. Very nice. Excellent.
My hair looks bizarre. What's the matter with it? It's gone raving bloody mad.
Our next guest, Tony Harding, is mightily enthusiastic. He's been waiting in Digital Green Room for about the last 15 minutes. I'm very impressed.
Well, it's because I told you I changed the catering. It's terrific there now.
No, much better. Well, we are certainly going to be.
I've also realised I shouldn't be wearing a check shirt. So I just thought, I thought I'd dress up a bit, get out of a t-shirt and put on a shirt, which after the show will be coming straight off. And of course, it's playing havoc with the camera. Sorry about that, everybody.
So it is. Do you know, I hadn't even noticed till you said that.
Yeah, Mr. Chic Geek.
What?
Change your handle.
Well, either that or I possibly wasn't even paying attention to what you're wearing. There's a wacky thought.
Well, that's just ridiculous. It would not cross my mind that you were not paying attention to what I'm... Move on.
Well, quite.
You know Martin Bell and I, who lives in... And he's now a great sort of therapist living in Mallorca. We grew up as kids. Bizarre. Francine, you know Martin. That's my cousin Francine's watching, I know, because she said good morning. You remember Martin on Cannon's Drive? That Martin. Yeah. Sure.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Uncle Charles and Auntie Rhoda Martin.
I've got good news for you.
What's that? I've won the lottery?
Nope.
My Tesla's outside.
Oh, look. I made a jump.
Oh, it's not holiday. I forgot.
Oh, dear.
They couldn't get
You guessed it right.
Oh, good. Hang on. We've got somebody in the Digital Green Room and you're asking about with your bread. I can only apologise, guest. Here we go. We get a good view of Phil's house. Oh, here.
True, you do,
well for himself.
And
He's
actually,
got an upstairs
look what a nice day it is outside. How nice is that
very
outside?
Nice. Show us that again. I've not seen your.
I knew you were
I've never been
that.
invited. God forbid.
There you go.
God forbid I should get an invite. Now look, what's the bandstand in the middle? What is that? Seriously.
That's the street pagoda.
What camp is that? It's the street pagoda.
Well, you asked.
Street pagoda. What kind of? Where are you living? Street
Anyway,
pagoda.
so here's today's collar.
Philip, hang on. Does the it's had a baby. Look, it had a little baby.
It has.
It's had a little.
It's given birth.
It shagged a bagel and it's given birth to a tiny holler. I swear to God, I think my grip on reality is going rapidly.
Well, I'll say, I mean, like, frankly, I didn't think it was in a million years I'd hear the expression, it shagged a bagel.
Well, there you go. That's why I get the big bucks. Do you know, I've had a blinding headache. It's gone this morning for the last 2 days. I have felt
Right.
incredibly dizzy and had a blinding headache. I ploughed on
Right.
with all my work, didn't bother. But oh look! Did you make the hand gel as well? I look
Let's get to that.
around. There's a hand gel.
Right. So we need to break into
Hang on,
today's.
that looks really good.
This is mini collar. Because what I do is I make a sample collar. So if I break open mini collar, oh look at that! Look at the fluffiness.
Oh, hang on, that looks bloody marvelous. Shut up, Ed.
Today we're just going to.
Oh, that looks really good. Ed Grossman back. Ed, I know you made an earlier comment, Ed Grossman, and I thought if I open that up, it's going to be a little bit rude to our guest, and she seemed really very nice. That looked great again. Hang on, don't see the underside of the plate. We want to see what's on the plate. You eating all that? You're taking all that up to your desk?
No, I'm not eating all of it. I'm giving out samples.
I've got nothing. I don't have any bread in the house. I've got a Rivita. Hey, get me, Mr. International. Paul Andrews, bagel shagging live on MRS. A year ago, we couldn't have predicted this. A year ago, we were more sane.
To be honest with you, I don't think I could have predicted it either.
No, it's not.
Anyway.
Now, Ed Grossman, Emma Webb, holla, watch. Yes, Phil, thank you. Yeah. Ed Grossman, it's now my grandmother, who died a billion years ago, much to my father's relief, would always say bagel. It was always a bagel. We've given up the word. Now it's a bagel. New York said bagel, and we always said bagel. Who the hell knows? Down the Ridley Road Market. Anyone remember all of that? Remember that? Ridley Road Market, the egg stores, all of that stuff. That was all my grandma, who lived in Stamford Hill, near the waterworks. There was a big waterworks there that the Germans kept bombing when my mum was living in the cellar. She should have been evacuated, and she wouldn't go. So as a schoolgirl, my mum lived in the cold.
Evacuating.
What are you saying now? What are you doing?
I was saying, can we stop talking about waterworks and evacuating? It's most unsettling.
Yeah. Andrea Lucas. I shall make mine next week. I've just taken my last one from the freezer. All I've got in my freezer is vodka.
So have I. Toffee vodka.
No, I haven't got the toffee vodka. No, I just got like vodka. That's my nighttime drink. It's all, of course, of Alexander Lichtenfeld and her dad Jimmy. It's their fault. So I have I make myself a little martini, and that's it. Yeah, with an olive. Then I pretend I was sitting at the American bar in the Savoy. I'm just actually sitting in my kitchen with the dog. What a life! How is it? Does it taste good? Taste all right?
What, this week's effort's not bad, actually, because I cheated this week. I bought last week.
Yeah. I don't think I could start making bread. I don't know. No, I have a quick question. Can I digress? It's got nothing to do with mental health whatsoever. Question.
Has it got to do with bread?
It's kind of got to do with bread. It's not too tangential. All right. Those air dry cooking things, you put them on the side. Usually, what are you putting a face for? You don't know where I'm going with this. Are they any good? Anyone bought one? Are
you talking about the light fryers, the air fryer?
Yeah, the air fryer thing. Are they any good?
Can't say I've ever used one.
Okay, well, that's a complete cul-de-sac of conversation. Right, Sue Cressman. Right, this is important stuff, serious, so we're not going to make any jokes. That's my subtle way of saying don't make a joke. Sue Cressman, who we love on the show, I wanted to say that the documentary about my brother-in-law's murder, Jesus, will be on ITV1 on Wednesday, March the 3rd at 9:00. This is the one that was originally with Martin Bashir, has now been edited. Well, good, because we don't really like Martin Bashir, and I can't forgive him for what he did. Now, this is the case, Sue. You're going to have to jog my memory, because I know we've had lots of conversations that we've never spoken, but we have lots of writing conversations about this. This was Fergie's, am I going right? Sarah Ferguson's not maid, what do you call it? Companion, dresser, that was it. Was that it? Can you help us with this? Be a very interesting documentary there. So come back to us, Sue, if you've got time. Andrea Lucas, I live in Stamford Hill in Castlewood Road. My grandmother lived in Allerton Road. No room in my freezer for vodka. Blimey, you made a pina colada last night. If you like pina colada, I will watch that. Yes, this case that Sue Cressman's referring. Her brother-in-law was murdered. It made all the papers because it was by the woman who was Sarah Ferguson's dresser, I believe. It's a sort of Agatha Christie type plot. Sue Cressman, Tommy Cressman. That's right, I was correct. Tommy Cressman, Sue Cressman's brother-in-law, was murdered by Jane Andrews, who was Sarah Ferguson's royal aide and dresser. It was a huge case, if you remember it. Do you remember that? Oh my God. 20 years ago, she killed him because he wouldn't marry her. Well, he certainly won't now. She killed him because he wouldn't marry her.
You know what?
Right.
You actually remind me of sort of how you can never really appreciate what goes on behind closed doors and what families have to live with. You know, whenever we look at someone on social media, how everyone's always sort of saying that they're living their best life and they're always posting photos of themselves doing something or enjoying themselves, having a laugh. No one ever knows what goes on behind closed doors, seriously. And I find it shocking.
Sue Cressman saying this is the 6th documentary about this, the 6th documentary about this horrible murder. Didn't she claim? I think the defense was, and Sue, you have to help me out here because I wasn't involved, so I was only reading it like a punter. But the sort of defense was, oh, she was mentally ill, this, that, and the other. And I think I'm trying to. 20 years ago, I was only 12. I think the defense fell apart, didn't it? It turned out she was just deeply unpleasant. I can't remember exactly. So that's Wednesday. 9 o'clock, ITV. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
Right.
It's extraordinary.
Let us move on.
What are you clapping your hands for in that kind of busy way?
Well, because as I say, our next guest has been waiting very patiently in the digital green room. And he looks poised as a spring, raring to go, nodding along with this. So good, he's ready.
Okay.
It's now time for us to meet Tony Harding, who's the MD of Momentum SPK. Now, Tony, I want you to tell us first and foremost, because momentum is a word that unfortunately, first and foremost, by the way, welcome to Men's Radio.
Now, those are bookshelves. That's bookshelves, fella.
You insulted them a minute ago. I didn't notice that.
I didn't know you had so many. It wasn't me.
If you look closely, they're not
wallpaper,
books.
isn't it?
Is it wallpaper?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Good
that's
work.
really clever.
Can I just point out, it wasn't me who insulted it. I love books personally.
No.
So,
when you learn to read, you like them. That's really good. That's wallpaper, Tony. We're liking that.
It is. No, I thought I'd go into the green room early just to get a little bit of a listen to what you're talking about, and obviously
and now
vodka in freezers and breaking bread, walking down the stairs. It's quite an impressive.
You're getting an idea of how this works, how this show balances itself out in terms of the serious subjects. Now, in all seriousness, Momentum SPK, is that the correct way, or is it Momentum Speak?
Yeah. It was a name devised a long time ago by a creative person who thought the SPK would be a nice thing when we used to type the word SPK to speak to somebody on a text. It doesn't really work now, 14 years on, but there you go.
It's still, as long as you guys still do the job you set out to do, that's the main thing. But do tell us, for those who don't know, what is the job of Momentum SPK? What is it you guys do?
Well, I'm a business consultant. I work for myself, so I analyze people and try to help them sell more things and work on business strategies and that sort of thing. So, that's the type of stuff that I do. So I've been working from home for a long time, so none of this is new to me. But obviously, we were going to chat about a lot of things about kidney and all the other things around it. So, that's the work that I do probably helped me get to a certain place, which I'll probably discuss in a bit.
Okay. Phil, why don't we make Tony the star of the screen and we can be little postage stamps? No, not me. There we go.
I like that. I like that.
That's way better. You're the star.
Makes the books look better. Yeah.
It's I really love that wallpaper. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Anyway, there we go. Okay,
Best of all is you don't have to dust those books. Right.
or
Now,
read them.
Tony, as you rightly identify, Momentum SPK is just one part of what you do, but
Yeah.
you're quite a busy sort of chap. Tell us about some of the other work that you do.
Well, I think the principal reason to chat to you today really is about Kidney Research UK. I work as an ambassador with them. I had the misfortune, or fortune in some ways, to this time last year be diagnosed with cancer. They found a tumour on my right kidney. I had to have it taken out. Obviously, I found out on April the 1st, which is always a great way of finding out things. So, it was daunting at the time, but I started off and wrote a blog about it, and it just took off, and people started asking me about things, and I still get people talking to me about it all the time. So, a lot of what I want, to get across to people today is that, take your kidney seriously, because it's quite an important thing. I certainly didn't. I'm the exponent of it. I'm a big lad. I had type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, quite a few things like that. So from my point of view, it's just to try and get people to understand they need to look after themselves.
Tony, let's take a little step back, because when did you first realize that something was amiss? Because obviously, I'm guessing you didn't think to yourself, "Oh, my kidney feels funny, off I go." What was it that sort of was displaying symptom-wise, if anything, that made you discover this?
What happened, Phil, was I had a urinary tract infection about 12 months prior to them finding anything. So, and I was put on an NHS waiting list, 16-week waiting list, and they never got back to me and never came to me. Then out of the blue, just after my 50th birthday, about 10 months after I'd had the original illness, they sent me a note saying, "Look, we can't deal with it. Can you go to a private hospital?" So I thought, that typical thing that a man does where we say, "Well, should we go? Should we not go?" And I thought, what, I better go. It's free. I've just had my 50th. I better sort myself out. It's February last year. I thought, what, I'll go. So they gave me an appointment. I went off to a private hospital. As part of that, he said, "Look, I'm going to do your scan. You've had kidney stones in the past. Doesn't look like you've got this tract infection anymore. We'll do a scan." Went off and had the scan. Got a panic phone call the next day saying, "Look, we need you to come back in and get a deeper scan. We've seen something on your right side, some kind of shadow." I famously always said it wasn't Hank Marvin. so I saw this as being, right, okay, I've got a shadow. I don't know what that is. No idea. And it was just as COVID was hitting. So it was literally, basically said to me, this doctor, and he probably saved my life if truth be said. He said, "Look, if you don't come in tomorrow, first thing, we won't be able to do this because of the pressure that's going to be on the NHS." So I said, "Right, okay, we're going to lose all our staff to them because COVID's hitting and all of our resource will go. So you've got to come and have the scan." So I went and had the scan. It was a deep scan, and they found that I had a 10, 11 centimetre tumour on my right kidney. And I had absolutely no symptoms whatsoever.
Nothing at all.
Nothing. No pain whatsoever. I'd had bits of kidney stones. So I was just like, jeepers, I don't, couldn't fathom it out really, to be honest with you. It was one of those sort of moments in life where you go, yeah, this will happen to somebody else, but it's happening to me. And straight away, then I went straight into the system. And obviously it was just as COVID was hitting. So I got the confirmation April the 1st. And I then spent the next 4 or 5 weeks going in and out of hospital. And that's pretty much what started the process. And we went through all of that. You get all of the other different things that go on with it. But, I can, depends how much depth you want me to go into, guys.
Go in. The floor is yours, Tony. Please. It's a very important subject, and we're grateful that you're here and willing to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm very open about it. Everyone talks about cancer in a certain way, and as soon as you hear you've got the diagnosis, there's a little bit of you thinks, this is it. This is curtains. There's a great phrase I use quite a lot. This, it's a club nobody wants to join, but a lot of us will end up on the dance floor, because when I was a kid, it was 1 in 5 people got cancer. Then it was 1 in 4. Then it was 1 in 3. Now it's 1 in 2. So it's an awful lot of people. So I didn't know much about it, to be honest with you. And the guy that I saw at the private hospital was fantastic. He said, "Look, it's the best type of kidney to have. It really is. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take your kidney out." And And I was like, right, okay. And then we went through a process of looking at the kidney. I got referred into the NHS. They were absolutely brilliant. Rushed you straight in, sort of had a look at it. They got you to have the consultant meetings and all these sort of things. And it was literally like, look, we can't do it keyhole. We're going to have to open you up. So when I've got a 45 centimeter scar across my chest, look like I've had a war with a Crocodile Dundee type type knife. The old. It's one of those sort of things. And
Tony, you clearly have great humor about this. There's a couple of sort of things that you've sort of said that have obviously sort of meant that you can see not a funny side, but you are prepared to laugh at a situation wherever possible. How important was that positive, that sort of humorous side of you in your recovery and your time is sort of going through this?
Well, it's funny because I don't know many. I mean, I'm going to talk about men here because obviously I know women who've had cancer as well. I know it happens for both sexes, but I didn't actually know many men who'd had cancer. So I didn't really have anybody to talk to. So we started off with saying I was a business consultant. My business consultancy solves problems. So I just went at it and thought, right, how do I solve a problem? So the humor part of it was just what I do day to day. I am sarcastic. I'm from Manchester. I look at things in a certain way. I like to have banter. I always have done. I have my own pace of doing things, and I just thought, what, I'll just approach this exactly the same way as I would anything else. So humor's been a massive part of this, and I remember there was a day when I spoke to the kidney specialist, a lady, and she said to me, said, look, you've got diabetes, type 2 diabetes, you're overweight, you've got you've got high blood pressure. We're not going to be able to do the keyhole surgery. It's going to be open surgery. That's going to be really serious. You have a massive scar, and you might get COVID. And I said to her the fatal line of, was there any good news? And there was complete silence. There was like about a 10-second silence. And I was like, right then. so it was one of those moments.
But apart from that...
Like, oh my God. So you realize quickly that you've got to get through it. And if I'm being honest with you, it's one of the reasons why I wrote the blog. It was a bit like the Jerry Maguire moment. Do I send the blog to everybody who knows me in my network? Because I'm quite well known in what I do. And I thought, you know what, I've got to share this information. I've got to get it out there, because the reality of it is people just don't talk about it. So the humour was massive, Phil, in this. It has to be, because if people stop talking to you like you're alive, then guess what? You're going to die with it.
That is precisely the reason why on this show, I mean, some people do find it a bit cringeworthy at times when they hear the humour that both Russ and I try and introduce when we're trying to talk about really serious subjects, and they don't quite understand why we're so flippant in between and really lighten the mood. It's very simple. If you talk about something serious with a serious tone and a serious attitude, then people are going to treat it like the great unknown. They're not going to show an interest in it because they'll almost shy away from it. It's just, it's almost quite off-putting in some weird way.
Because it's too scary. It's, beyond. I mean, I'm old enough, Tony, and you will, I'm sure, relate to this because you've kind of alluded to it in your chat. Is that no one would even say the word cancer? It would go like, Fred Smith is not very well, and they give a knowing sort of nod, and you're supposed to psychically know that he hasn't got a heavy cold, he's got cancer, or they just say the big C. And they wouldn't say it was almost as though you were saying Voldemort. If you said the word cancer, suddenly it was, catching. It was something that you could catch from the ether. We have come a long way in that regard. And what you've done, Tony Harding, is a huge step. It's important stuff, It's very important to get the word out there.
I think what's really important, Russ, is that, I'm willing to talk about it because it's what I do for a living. I often do sales training. I do, all these type of things. So I'm really comfortable talking about it. But I also, there's a tiny part of me goes, I was lucky that they whipped the kidney out and I recovered. And the problem I've got now is that my other kidney is only a third of the size, because that was the other part of all of this. This was all getting discovered at the same time, is that because it's a small kidney, and you talk about having vodka, I can't drink alcohol. Imagine having a life with no alcohol,
No,
it's one of those.
So presumably, you physically can't process the alcohol. Your kidney
I can, but I'm just above the dialysis line at the minute. So the dialysis line means that the problem is it's your salt intake. It's all about the things that your kidney would filter. And my left kidney is only a third of the size of the kidney they took out. I mean, that was a great moment when they said that. They said, "Oh, by the way, we've got some news for you. Your right kidney is responsible for about 3/4 of your output." I was like, "Oh, that's okay." So say that again. So my left one's only worth 25. So they were sort of saying straight away you could go on to dialysis. Well, this is why I discovered Kidney Research UK, because from my point of view, I didn't know anything about it. I mean, things like salt. I'll give you an example. If you have beans on toast, which is a staple snack or whatever,
staple supper.
4.5 grams of salt in that. You're only allowed 6 a day. So you put that into practice. A packet of crisps, 2.5 grams of salt. I'm allowed 6 grams of salt a day maximum. That's with no alcohol. Only had 1 coffee a day. Have to drink a lot of water. Now, I've accepted all that, and that's the boundaries I've had, because guess what? I'd rather still be here than not.
Precisely.
And that's the point. I think you have to adjust your line of fire a little bit. So all of these things started happening to me, and it was a massive thing. And I'm very lucky. I've got some really good people around me. My dog was fantastic. She's put up with me rumping and not throwing her the ball. And my missus has been great, and then all my friends have been fantastic, because that's what you need around you.
I love the way, Tony, you've been saying so. Your dog comes first.
Sorry, I'll get hit for that later. To be fair, my missus said to me yesterday, she said, "I'm third in line anyway." As in, like, I'm behind the dog as well, so I don't worry about that. The dog's the most important thing. You know that, Russ. You've got a dog.
Well, I do. Yes, the center of the entire universe.
Might I suggest that you've mentioned the magic word? What make and model is the dog?
She's a border collie crossed with a miniature poodle called a border. She's a border poo.
Wow,
that's what you call her. Doesn't shed any hair whatsoever.
Great.
I'm going to read this out to you. Tony, let me read this out. This is from Sue Cressman.
Okay, well, we won't put it on the screen because you disappeared.
Everyone disappears. Sue Cressman, when I had cancer, I was 32, which was 30 years ago. Looking good, Sue, if I may say. It was a dirty word. I had one friend just couldn't even speak to me after my first diagnosis. I couldn't find any information about chemotherapy. The second diagnosis, 22 years later, there was so much information about the cancer, such a difference from 30 years ago. I have to say, from my own experience, such a difference from the early 2000s up to 2004. I mean, we really have made a lot of progress. Tony, why? Because I'm not a technical person, I'm asking the question I know that Phil would also like to know. The fact that your remaining kidney was much smaller, is that just a natural thing, or had there been some sort of problem?
No, it's just a natural thing. You're born with that. You wouldn't know. You have each kidney has an EFGR score which fits on each kidney, and once they take one away, you've only got that level. That's what they judge you against for the dialysis. Right. So I'm just unlucky. It's just and the problem with kidneys is that they don't regenerate. Kidney Research UK are working with people at the minute to try and see if there's a way you can regenerate. They're just giving some money to Adam Brooks, for example, to help them try and develop something to help you redevelop, that your kidney can actually fight some of the disease. Now, mine probably didn't start off at the score it is at the minute. Obviously, it didn't. But if I'd have known when I was 16 that one kidney's not as good as the other, would it have made me change and alter my life? It might have done a little bit, but I don't think so, because you don't expect you're going to lose one. You start off with 2 and you're going to keep 2.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's just one of those things. It's a medical thing that I couldn't have done anything about. The rest of it I probably could have done. I mean, I think that's the other part of this. I never sit here and think that some of this wasn't down to me. I mean, I worked in advertising for 25 years. I lived the Vida Loca. I had a great time. So,
yes.
I can't
relate to that.
When people go through illness of some description, a lot of the time, one thing that always sort of comes out, a common theme, is how they say that their priorities change. Would you say that's the case for you, that since your illness that you've changed your priorities?
I go on holiday more. No, sorry, I don't do that. I tell you what it's made me do. It's made me realize that I probably realize now that saving up for a pension fund is probably not something I need to do, if I'm being absolutely honest about it. But what it's made me do is just be more realistic. And what I've tried to do is by doing things like the blog and talking on things like this and working with people like Kidney Research, I'm trying. What I'm trying to do is say, look, I am open to talk to people. I mean, I've had somebody I've had somebody I don't know in the last 4 weeks has been referred to me. So that's 4 different people who've all going through the same sort of thing, and I can give the relation to what it is, because people are scared stiff about it, you know. And if I can talk to more people, you know, and be able to talk about it freely and openly and say, yes, there are some bits of it that are not very nice, but some bits of it, you know, the technology is fantastic. I mean, there's a guy that I'd never spoke to a couple of weeks ago. I mean, how unlucky is this? He'd found out that his wife, you know, had cancer, and then 2 weeks later he found out he had cancer. I mean,
Oh my God.
with 2 young kids, you know, and he phoned me out of the blue and said, I just can't talk to anybody. And I'm like, you know, to be able to talk to people like that is quite an honor as well. So is it making me realign my life? Yes, it's making me lose weight, walk more, do the things I want to do, and I'm looking forward to when obviously the brakes are off. But you know, what it's doing is allowing me to share the story a little bit more and talk to people about it. And I don't have every answer. I'm not always right, but you know, I'll talk to anybody about this subject, because I believe that the more people who talk about it, the better it becomes.
But you are right as far as your story is concerned, and that's the most important thing. The way I look at anything like this is, as long as you are talking, you and others, as long as you are talking about your personal experience and it potentially helps others, that's all that matters. It might not necessarily be about having the answers, but it's interesting what you say about speaking to someone who discovered a matter of weeks apart from their other half having cancer. I was, for Shock Horror, another program that I work on, was speaking to somebody only yesterday, and she had been diagnosed with breast cancer a matter of weeks, if not months, after her father had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And you just think, flipping heck, how much does one family have to go through?
I know. I mean, I have looked at the sky a couple of times and gone, have you got anything more for me? Come on.
What else?
Have you got anything more for me? God, come on, bring it on.
Well, you know what, Tony?
If you've ever seen the film,
it's strange you say that, because the first book that we wrote, which was autobiographical, was called Shout at the Moon. You can still get it on Amazon, because I got to a stage with my late wife that I literally walked out of the hospital at about midnight, and I was walking up Marylebone High Street yelling. I was, you know, you were saying you were looking up at the sky, and I was literally shouting at the moon. That's why I called the book Shout at the Moon. You do get like that. You can. Yeah. It really pushes you. It really pushes you. You think, what else? So it takes a lot of mental reserve to get through it. But you have demonstrated in spades that a positive mental attitude, of which I am absolutely convinced, without being hippy-dippy about it, which I'm not, a positive mental attitude really does help, because it releases various chemicals from the brain, and it helps.
Yeah, I think so. I think the humor that you went on about before, you know, I think it's quite an interesting thing. You know, the humor comes from being positive, I think, sometimes, you know. I mean, even strange things, you know, I remember, you know, you walk in hospital and it's like top trumps, you know, of who's got the worst illness. I remember sat in the ICU and there was like 4 people, and I was sat there going, Christ, I'm so glad I haven't got he's got.
Yeah.
You know, and then this, you know, it's like, it's just one of those unbelievable moments where you sit there going, geez, what's happening to him?
Tony, do you know what? That is super telling, what you've just said just there, because you said, I sit there and I'm thinking, thank goodness I haven't got what they've got. Whereas others would potentially sit there and think, why me? Or worse, they'd compare notes and they say, when they found out what's wrong with someone, oh, well, I've got this. And it's almost as if they're the ones who are worse off. And that's really interesting, the fact that you will sort of be grateful for what you've got rather than ungrateful for what you haven't got. Really, I believe, so that's very telling of the way an individual behaves and thinks in life. Now's the right time, by the way, to remind you that you are listening to Men's Radio Station. It's the Daily Show here with Russ Kane. He's over there in, I don't know, you're in London somewhere. And it's me, Phil Dave, live from Hertfordshire. And our guest is Tony Harding. Now, Tony is telling us about the importance of raising awareness for kidney disease and kidney health, because someone who, in case you missed the beginning, was diagnosed after his 50th birthday with kidney cancer. without any symptoms, hasten to add, it is important that we do learn to look after ourselves, because now more than ever, especially when we're sort of living in an age where people are so afraid to go to the doctors, even if they actually have symptoms, never mind if they don't have them, but if they actually have symptoms, they're terrified at the prospect of going to the doctors. There are other conditions out there, many more other conditions other than just COVID. And it is so important that we just don't neglect ourselves.
I'm going to read 3 comments, Tony, because you're in communication, so you probably want to get the feedback of the way you're resonating. Excuse me. Martin Allen. Tony has a great attitude, a very Patch Adams outlook. We need people like him. Big respect, Tony. You're an inspiration. Ed Grossman. Tony, I love your attitude and humor. It's uplifting. And Paul Claridge, humor and positive attitude worked for me. So there you go. There you go.
To anyone who doesn't know Paul's story, by the way, he was very seriously ill with cancer, and certainly the fact that he's still here is miraculous, frankly. So the way that he has actually sort of said that humor helped him really just goes to show that it can play a massive part. And I have to say as well, I know people who had a very negative attitude, and unfortunately they didn't survive their battle. So I am a great believer that it plays a very big part in it.
Yeah, I think there's something I would say, the two things that definitely helped me. I had somebody who'd had a brain tumor who said to me, look, you will get through this, but they wouldn't be doing it if they didn't think it would work. So you put the power into the NHS, and you put the surgeons who were doing it. I mean, Dr. Lung, who looked after me, was fantastic. He was absolutely brilliant from the moment the way he talked to you. And obviously, there was times where they had to be really harsh and deliver it. And I told him so. I said, I think there was better ways of you telling me things. And I told him all this afterwards. But he was fantastic. But the second part of it was the response from other people around you. That when I posted the blog, I think I had about 10 people, maybe 11 people who came who'd had cancer in my network who hadn't told me.
Wow.
I had a really good friend who'd lost both her breasts, to cancer. Didn't tell me. Hadn't told me. I had a friend who went through everything, listened to me talking about mine and my moaning, and he was having chemo at the same time. And it was only January he came out and started saying, look, I need to tell people. So it's just this whole thing about what we need to do as individuals, understand that talking to people is really important. Yeah. And I think the problem with COVID is it's going to be that there's a lot of people got these things and don't know anything about it. So what I would say to everybody and anybody listening is that if you do feel any twinges, pains that you don't know what they are, go and see about it. Get off your backside and go and do it. I mean, I talked to somebody last week who had a lump under their arm, and I said, get your backside to the doctors. Young family, you don't want this to be something that it isn't, and it'll just be something safe, but you're better off finding out about it than not.
Totally.
And also, even if, by the way, my sister is actually an example of this, and I haven't really sort of spoken about this before because it was quite disturbing at the time, is the only way really to put it. And even now, I still can't quite believe I'm talking about my sister. But she discovered a suspicious sort of mole on her skin. Don't actually remember where it was, but it was irrelevant, I suppose. Discovered a suspicious. That was it, Stanmore. Discovered a suspicious-looking mole on her skin and sort of just ignored it, went along with it, didn't think anything of it. She was a bit of a sun worshipper, still is in some weird way. How she would just always be out in the sun, wouldn't think twice about sort of occasionally using sunbeds and stuff like that. Anyway, she ignored it, carried on. This was in her early, mid-20s, I think it was. Finally went to the doctor about it, and they said, you know what? If you'd waited maybe a matter of weeks more, we'd be having a very different conversation right now. We can get rid of this. You have just caught it in time. Wow. And it was on the brink of turning nasty. And you just I don't know what drove her to go to the doctor that day.
Fate.
A matter of weeks would have made the difference as to whether or not they had removed it or not, and it could have turned nasty.
Well, I nearly didn't go to the private hospital. The NHS referred it. I nearly didn't go because I thought there's nothing wrong with me. But it was purely the fact that I had my 50th birthday. I thought, you know what? I need to start getting my life in order. I'm overweight. I need to sort all these sort of things out. I might as well go. It's a free check. I'll go. And I was I would say from a odds point of view, it's 50-50 whether I went to that first session. If I hadn't done, I'd probably be dead by now because it was growing into the valve in my heart. I'd have been keeled over and gone, and nobody would have known anything about it. That'd have been it.
Wow. Sue Cressman says, humor and attitude also helped me. I was in a hospice for 10 months and used to tell all the other patient jokes, Sue, as if they didn't have enough aggravation. I wasn't very good at telling the jokes, though. people, you know, it's all these things are very. I bang on about it because I know too much about it, but these things are so time sensitive, as you, Tony, have quite rightly said. You know, if you draw nothing out of this 3-hour show, if you think you've got a problem, please get it seen to. Just get it checked for your own peace of mind. You know, I remember, I rarely talk about this, but I do remember going and the person I was with, and they said, well, you've got to go and get it. And she said, well, you know, I've got quite a bit. They said, you're not understanding me. You're going from this room straight to hospital. And I was like, what? You know, because I got plans, I got this. No, you're going straight. And that's how time sensitive these things are. So don't hang about. Also, Tony, you know, we're in the middle of this wretched COVID nightmare. The NHS are, and we get a lot of chit chat about this. They're still dealing with people who do have serious other illnesses rather than COVID. I mean, it hasn't all shut down.
Well, no, they are doing now. They're starting to come back to deal with people. They have to. I'll put it into context. I went, obviously, after I'd found out I had the cancer, and it was about 7-8 weeks before my operation. I went to a clinic on a Friday in the Western in Edinburgh, and there were 7 clinics there, and I was the only person in the 7 clinics in the morning session, the only person, and it was purely because people weren't going because they were scared stiff of going. You know, they were scared stiff of catching COVID. The message that was out there was that. So it's gone a long way, I think, and they are busier. But I think the problem's going to be when this comes out of the way, the backlog of people is going to be as bad as it's not going to be, hopefully nothing's as bad as the pandemic, but I think the backlog of people is going to be huge. And that's another reason why getting to the hospital as soon as you can is important, because you need get yourself in the system if there is something wrong.
I don't agree with you.
Yeah, I don't.
One thing. You said something which is really, really, and Phil and I have been debating this for over a year, and it's this. The pandemic's terrible. Obviously, it's awful. It's just, it's destroyed everything. But compared to cancer, with respect, compared to cancer, it's, if you had to have the choice, COVID or cancer, I'd choose COVID, right? Every time, every day. And as you say, that the backlog that's building up, because it's COVID, can't deal with anything else. What scares me and concerns me is that because, as we've said, these are time-sensitive illnesses. You can't sit around on your ass and think it's going to go away. It won't. It's not like a cold.
No, I mean, you put it into context. Sorry, Russ. I mean, put it into context. There's 36 people every day are diagnosed with kidney cancer, normally. 36.
36, wow.
Right, now, if that was on a, if you put that into a COVID briefing, I mean, I think there was something like 70 people died in Scotland yesterday with COVID. That's half of the same amount. Now, bear in mind, I think kidney cancer is about the 7th most common cancer in the UK. So there's 6 more that are worse. You think how many people are dying every day of, cancer, or getting diagnosed, or not getting diagnosed. So actually, I agree with you in a lot of the way. What you said, as I say, I think all these things are open.
2 things is going to happen, Tony, for sure, which is why we've never been busy on men's radio and women's radio as well. One is, and we've already alluded it to with our first guest from No Isolation, the pressure on NHS and mental health is going to be unprecedented, because even the strongest of people are struggling. And there's no point saying, oh, they shouldn't be. They are. Everybody is. We all are. That's number one. And as you say, the backlog of cancer patients is going to be huge. You just think, well, how are they going to deal with all of this? It's a worry. It is a worry. There's no 2 ways about it.
Yeah,
by the way, Tony, did you when you found out that you had the diagnosis you had, when you found out you had cancer, was there any part of you that was worried about how you would be treated based on what was going on around you with the pandemic? Did you fear that you would miss out potentially on treatment because of it?
I think because it was really weird in a way, because I was the only person in the waiting room at times. I felt like I was actually getting rushed up the queue, because there wasn't a queue. But my consultant at the time said to me something on the lines of, look, yours is that serious. We would have operated quickly no matter what the pandemic was here or not. So, but I know, I think it's all about seriousness. And I still think they're going to have to look after people, who are really serious. I think the problem's going to be the people who've missed the chemotherapies, all of these type of things. I think that's going to be a massive thing. And I think what Russ said before about mental health for people. I mean, crikey, if I was sat here now having to have chemo and it had been put off, I mean, you've basically got something hanging over your head for 10 or 12 months that you just, how you did. I mean, think about it. You can have a row with somebody and that can hang over you for 6 months, just by not wanting to talk to somebody. Imagine what it's like when you've got something like that is really hanging over you, that is part of your life every single day. That's also why, somebody might not think it, but I feel quite lucky. I haven't, in some ways, I feel sometimes I've got this imposter syndrome where I feel like going, I've not had, I didn't have any of the chemotherapy. I've not had all of the other little things that can go with it, the side effects and all of these, sort of things. And then my missus sometimes will step me back and say, hold on, you've only got a kidney that's doing a third of the work. It's a fifth of the amount of output you're getting based on the fact there's only a third of the size it should be. And I think, I suppose that's fair enough.
Tony, isn't the human condition the most extraordinary thing? There you are. You were diagnosed with cancer. You had a kidney removed. Your other kidney's not 100% functioning. And yet you say, I sometimes think I've got imposter syndrome. The human condition is just extraordinary, isn't it? How you can, even under those really extreme situations, it doesn't get much more extreme than what you've described. You think, yeah, but I didn't have this and I didn't have that. I'm a bit of an imposter. Well, of course you're not, but it's fascinating how we think. Fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a friend who's he's terminally, he's got terminal cancer, and he says a story. He's been given weeks to live, not a long time at all. He's a fantastic lad, and he had a really good day a couple of weeks ago where he felt really bad because he was with his kids and everything, and he felt fantastic, and he was out on the beach wandering about, and he felt like there was nothing wrong with him, and he went home that night, and I read the tweet that he put out, and it was something along the lines of, I've had a really good day today. I feel like there's nothing wrong with me. I feel quite, and I feel bad because everyone's rushing around asking me how I'm getting on and all of that. And I thought, you know what, it could bring a tear to a man's eye.
That's ripping at my heart. How old is he, roughly?
I would say he's about 50.
Well,
48, 49, 50. Way too young. He's a great guy as well. I think, what's the famous saying? Only the great or the good die young. That's probably what I'm still here.
I've never quite understood that. I think it's just that people just say that to cheer. Only the good die young. Well, not really. I think it's just there is something you've touched on earlier. I'm not even sure if you remembered it, but it's something that for me has been terribly important and is again for me one of the engines that pushes along Men's Radio Station. One of the worst things I think you can do, and you didn't do it, and I'm not sure whether you remember saying this, you didn't say, why me? Because I honestly think if you open that door and say, why me? You're opening the door to madness. And I use the term advisedly, because the real question is, why not me? Yeah. It's just a random crapshoot. It's a random lottery. But if you start looking for signs and portents and, am I a terrible person? Have I done this? Have I done that? You will go around the bend. It's just not a question. It's such an unhelpful, negative thing. Why me? Why not?
It's also, I mean, I don't like the phrase when people say, fight as hard as you can. It's like, what you're going to do is give up. And if you don't fight and you don't survive if you're not fought hard enough. I mean, it's one of those sort of phrases where I sort of go, I think the why me phrase is, if you lived your life thinking of why me, you'd never do anything. And I've met loads of people over my life who, I work with lots of people in business as well, where they go, I've not got this, I've not got that, I want this and all this. And I go, well, go and do something about it. You're not happy, go and do something about it. Go and do it.
Stop dreaming about it.
Yeah, and I do think the way because my business, a lot of it is around problem solving and creating strategies and all these sort of things, and looking at the way people run a business to try and improve it. That helps me, as a problem solver. That helped me get through this. I mean, I always looked at it as being each part was a box that I went into. So waking up was a box. That was right. So going into the op and waking up, that was a box.
Yes.
I woke up, right. First box. Second box. When am I going to get in the chair next to my bed? Third box. When am I going to walk? So when the nurses were saying to me, in the ward, I remember the girl who looked after me was fantastic. I mean, crikey, having to put up with someone like me, in a hot little room. We were in like a small 4-person sort of square because everything had been shut down for COVID. There was no ventilation. And I said, no, it was shocking conditions at the time. And it was funny. I was running a temperature, so they thought he had COVID. They were like, "Oh, he's got COVID," and I'm like, "Jesus!" I think my temperature was 38.9 or something the first night I went. But I was determined to go and sit in the chair next to me because I kept saying to her, "Look, there's a fan there. I'm just too warm.
Just too hot."
It doesn't take a genius. I'm a big lad. I've just had an operation. I'm just too hot." So the girl was fantastic, Rachel. She just looked at me and she was just like, "Right, come on, we'll get you into the chair." And she said to me afterwards, she said when I left the ICU, she said, "You know something? No one ever gets in the chair on the first day after the op." I said, "Yeah, but the reason why I did it is because when my mum had heart surgery, and years and years ago, she made herself do things like if she was told to do one step, she did two. She was told to sit in a chair, she went and sat in. I thought, you know what, you've got to try and take that forward because if you don't, you're just going to end up withering away." And at that time, at the same time, there was a guy opposite me on the diagonal. He'd had 4 heart attacks. He wasn't even 40. He'd had 4 heart attacks, and he wouldn't get out of the bed. And I'm looking at him thinking, I don't want to tell you this, pal, but if you don't get out of the bed and start walking and doing stuff, you are going to die. But it wasn't my place to, And the nurses are like, "Well, you just won't do anything." And I'm thinking, well, you're going to have your 5th heart attack, and your 5th one might be the one that takes you away. No.
It's so interesting. It's weird when we get excellent guests like you on, and sometimes memories get triggered that I don't know whether the Americans would say suppressed. Me, I just forgotten it. My father had a heart attack very young, and I had forgotten until I was an adult that he dropped in front of me. I'd completely forgotten. And it was in the kitchen in Southgate in North London. He dropped clean in front of me with a heart attack.
My God.
Yeah, I know. I'd completely gone out of my head. And he was never the same man afterwards. And it's very interesting. He was, convinced it was going to happen again, etc., etc. And he was a very, very different man. And I was very young when it happened. I'd completely forgotten. But so the guy sitting in the bed diagonally opposite you, it's true. If you don't, I'm not saying take the risk, but you got to push yourself. You got to do exactly what you did, Tony. Right, I'm going to get out of the bed. I'm going to get in the chair. I'm going to go from the chair. I'm going to go for a little walk. All of those little markers in the sand are so important to test yourself and to progress. Otherwise you sit there a shivering, nervous wreck, and that is no way to live your life. It's pointless.
I mean, it was funny. There was things happened. I mean, there's little things throughout the process that, in a way, sort of make you think you're going to be all right, and it's kind of weird. I went to the room, the room that were taking me to for the pre-surgery, and then the guy that was walking me down, because I could have gone on a trolley, but I thought, I can still walk to the operation, so it might be the last time I do. And he turned up, and he was a double of one of my best mates, and he was also called the same name, Tony. And I just looked at him and thought, well, that's a sign. And then I woke up, and the first nurse looking after me was called Elizabeth, which was my mum's name, and the second nurse who looked after me was called Ian. And I was like, geez, that was my dad's name. And so
What are the chances?
So you also have to find things that you believe are happening for a reason, and I think that sort of mentality is something that's key as well. Obviously, it's all just fluke, isn't it? But the reality, if you have to grasp on any little thread that allows you to give you a bit more hope and a bit more, I'm going to be all right.
Hope is the reason is it's so interesting, Tony. You can certainly really tell you're in communications, because the reason COVID has been such a swine is because the word hope was missing in all the conversations. We had a billion and one bloody graphs and slides and all that crap, right? And the one thing in life, the last thing to come out of Pandora's box was hope. And you can kind of get through anything if you've got hope. If I can get to that date, if I can make that happen, boom, I can progress. But when you are not offered any hope at all, and that hope keeps receding, and the goalposts are being shifted, and you don't know where the hell you are, it is very difficult to focus. And hope is absolutely essential to every aspect of life. I
Absolutely.
so believe that,
Sorry, if I had a pound for every person who I know is positive, who's talked to me and has been negative in the last sort of 3-4 months, who people I think are really positive people and are really down about everything, it's because they haven't got the holidays to look forward to, taking their kids away to watch football or whatever. All these little things that give you the hope. There's no little barriers. I've always said to people, I'm quite lucky because I'm just happy to be here. So, the fact that Burnley are playing Crystal Palace, a game I wouldn't ever want to watch, I was like, oh, I'm happy I watched that because I'm still here. But in my world, I'm in a different place. But a lot of the people I speak to are just really down about it, and they can't see their families. So that I think the worst thing the government did with this whole thing, and with somebody like you say who's done a lot of communications, is actually take away that hope, but also take away the fact that they didn't give anybody, they put the fear of God into people from day one, that this is going to kill you.
Yeah, I was
it's like
it wasn't
you're
so much
speaking Phil's language, Tony.
This is it. It wasn't so much about taking the hope away. It was about not giving it in the first blooming place, and inadvertently taking it away by feeding such negative and, as you say, scary lines. And that has annoyed me throughout this entire thing. I am so hacked off the number of times we hear the number of people who have died because of COVID. And yet when once throughout all of this have we heard the number of people who've recovered from COVID? And
I agree with that.
Hell out of me.
I had this conversation with somebody yesterday. I said, are we saying that every single person who ended up in ICU in hospital has died?
Exactly.
We're not, are we?
Nope.
You put it into context. I know from the kidney point of view that 1 in 5 people who've serious kidney disease and on dialysis have passed away, who ended up in ICU. Now that's a massive figure. Now that's people with absolute chronic illnesses, but that also means 4 people survived. But it also means the other part is the people without illnesses. How many of them have survived? And I've never seen a figure like that. I've no idea. Have you guys?
No, you don't. You don't see those figures. And the other thing is, of course, to bring it down to the nitty gritty, they say, oh, ICU, it's absolutely full. And if you're like me, I have no medical background whatsoever. You think you're imagining in your head a huge ward, and there's only 6 beds there. It's usually like 6, 4 beds, 6 beds, maybe 8 beds tops. That's ICU. Well, of course it's going to get full. Doesn't mean there's hundreds of people that are lining up in the corridor. You've got to put it in some perspective.
It's very misleading language, and it's deliberately misleading as well. There's no doubt about it. When they say that hospitals are full of COVID patients, they don't mean the entire hospital is full of COVID. It means that it's at its maximum capacity to take COVID patients. So whether that be in ICU or whether that be in the general wards that have been allocated to it, it does not mean that there are other wards that are readily available to help people who are actually in need of help for other conditions. It's so misleading and so wrong.
It is.
I mean, when I went into hospital the first time I went into hospital, I expected to be greeted by somebody in full mask.
Yeah.
Full everything.
Hazmat suit.
Yeah, full top to bottom. And I just walked in the bottom corridor at the Western, and that was it. There was nothing. And then I walked in the first room, and there was nothing. And then I had to. Then eventually, I got to somebody who who made me press a dispenser and go and made certain I had a mask on. But I thought to myself, gee, because I couldn't believe it. Then I went up for a scan, and I was in a lift with people who had no masks on, who worked in the hospital. But they weren't people who worked in the hospital. They were just contractors. There were people in,
this is madness.
I remember coming home and saying to my missus, I can't believe this. I said, they're going on about COVID and all the things that they're doing and scared stiff of spreading it in hospitals, this, that, and the other. I've stood in a lift with Jimmy, the lift fella.
Yeah.
Who's just stood there in his normal work clothes. And I'm like, that's really weird. And I've probably been in hospital 15 or 16 times probably through that period. And it always amazed me that, it was only near the end after I'd had the op and well after where everything became really serious, and then it was being checked a lot more and there was more things. But I could literally walk in the back door of the Western General and walk down the corridor, and that was it. Nobody. There was a little station on the left. Press the thingy. It was like going in a little. You know what I mean? Nobody stopping you. It was like, what?
Let us hope it's not that bad. But yes, but still, it's just I don't. No one can use the excuse that they don't understand it or they don't know what's going on, because this is all anyone is ever talking about now, seriously. And bearing in mind that when MRS started, men's radio stations started, our raison d'etre, still try and maintain it wherever we can today, but obviously it's changed because of COVID. But the raison d'etre was very simple. It was to talk about, in particular, men's health, mental health, in particular, that and well-being, right? Now, everything seems to have somewhere along the lines a bit of a COVID underline to it. When we were talking just before to our guest about technology that we were talking to, when we were speaking earlier on to Harriet Gridley from No Isolation, and that, technically speaking, didn't have to be about COVID. It could have been about isolation, and yet we still spoke about it. So no one's got the excuse anymore that they don't know what's going on. What is wrong with people for not wearing a mask? It's just
extraordinary. It's
infuriating the hell out.
I don't understand it. I don't.
I went and got my jab on Monday.
Very good.
And it was so well run.
Yeah.
Literally straight in, straight out. Couldn't even feel it. It was gone. Back home again. And you sit there and think, that's just amazing how we've done that. And you just sit there and think, well, that's down to the NHS. The NHS at its peak, and the best things about the NHS are absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
I think 90% of the people I've met in this process have been absolutely brilliant. Yeah. But there's been 10% of people where I go, why are you just so rude? Why can you not talk to people normally? Why can you not, communicate properly? Why do you have to make everything? Because
without naming them, Tony, without obviously don't do any names. It's not fair. But what sort of position? I would hazard a guess, but I'll keep quiet. What sort of position were those people who were being rude that you were interacting with?
I had a nurse who, every time I went back in, because I also had another problem after I'd had the original op, I still had a kidney stone in the kidney that was left, so I had to go back in and get that taken out. So that was fun. And again, I still think I'm an imposter, so don't worry. And I was like, I used to crack a joke about this nurse whenever I met, because obviously the nurses got to know me. It was like going in a hotel, So the second and third and fourth time I went back in, I wasn't that bothered, because I was like, oh, you're all right, get on with them. But there's one nurse in particular, and every time I went, she's not on tonight, is she? Oh, please tell me. And they all used to know. They knew who it was, and they knew who she was. I'll tell you a little story. There's a point where you have your kidney operation, and you get all these intravenous, things through your neck, and so they can put things into you quickly, and they're through little tiny. Yeah, you have like 8 or 9 tubes, and each one of them they have to, so they can flush things through you quickly, and they have to be flushed before you do it, because if you get a bubble in it, you get an aneurysm and stuff like that. Sure. They only tell you this afterwards. But if we hadn't flushed it properly, there was a bubble in it, you'd die. You're like, oh, thanks.
Absolutely.
But there was a nurse came in to show 2 student doctors, right, how to do this, and she said, is it all right if I do this? I said, yeah, no problem. She never spoke to me again till they left. She just, and like was getting the nurses to do it and all this. She wasn't encouraging the nurses to talk to me or anything like that. So the two trainee doctors, their attitude.
Students do this on you as well?
Yeah, so the two trainee doctors were doing it, and she was checking they were doing it right. and
my God.
and they just walked out.
It's not like popping into Halfords, is it?
Oh,
And I remember, and there
Christ.
was a great, there was, listen,
Shoot
I say
that,
this in an isolation because that was the only nurse who was bad. The rest of them were absolutely fantastic. I had some fantastic laughs with some of them, you know. I mean, I remember getting moved. It's all right, we've moved you to a room. And I was like, oh, fantastic. I've got a room on my own. Fantastic. It's got a telly. I was like, oh, brilliant. So we haven't got a controller though. So I was in bed laid up with a telly with I couldn't control. I was like, "Wee, fantastic!" You know, you're like, and I used to laugh about it. Said, "Would you like me to put on?" I used to usually get an ITV3 and watch Minder and Sweeney and all that.
Excellent.
That was the only telly you had on.
Excellent.
So,
Great channel.
so it was a real funny sort of thing, you know, where you sit there and you go. There was just so much humour from the people, and they looked after you. And then once they know you a little bit, you know, they'll come in and they'll say, "This is your tea." I mean, there was one day I had a you know, the food in there is dreadful. I don't have, you know, it's absolutely shocking, which I can't fathom. You get 50 or 60,000 quid probably spent on you for an operation, then they're giving you food. And what they do is you sign your food for the day after, right?
Yeah.
So whoever's signed it for the day before, whoever that you've taken, is that you get their food, right? So if they've wanted soup, a sandwich, and I don't know, a trifle, they bring that to your table and say, this is what they ordered. And then they have to go back and find out what's left to give you the rest.
Oh,
so there was one day I famously had this, and I took a picture of it. I put it up on Twitter at the time. And it was, my choices were so bad because obviously there's a lot of things I couldn't now eat because of my kidney, right? Yeah. So but the only thing I could have was an egg sandwich and roast potatoes. So I sat there eating egg sandwich and roast potatoes. I thought, you know, this could catch on. And that was me, you know, that was your food. And you sit there and think, it just wasn't great. And I spoke to the consultant about it. I says, this is unbelievable. I mean, there was a macaroni cheese that if you threw it on the ceiling, it was, do you remember the TV program Butterflies years ago? When Ria, she used to cook the food. Yeah, with Wendy Craig. It was like food like that. I was like, what is this? And I never forget, there was a guy came in and he said, I'm really looking for my tea tonight. And I said, oh, what have you ordered? He says, the macaroni cheese. I went, oh, right, okay. You won't be happy when you get that, you know, because that's what you do. You end up understanding that. But you understand that I think they're giving something like 68p a person per day. It's something ridiculous to feed people. And they've got to do 3 meals out of that.
My God.
It's completely bonkers.
You know,
is it sense at all?
Is another little aside. One other final thing on the food thing. When you're in ICU, you could have toast, right? Because they had a toaster, right? When you moved into the big ward, they weren't allowed a toaster, so you weren't allowed toast.
Well, there you go. I mean, if that isn't a lesson in life, I don't know what is. There you go. So ICU, you can have.
What's your Twitter address, by the way, Tony?
Yeah,
Tony at momentumspk.co.uk.
Well, that's the email address. What's the Twitter?
Sorry, it's just I think it's just momentumspeak.co.uk.
Excellent stuff, Tony. It's been such a treat having you on the program. Seriously, I'll carry on talking if only we have more time.
No problem, Jen.
Thank you so much, and really, just best of luck with everything because, I love your attitude. Seriously,
no problem. I'm always welcome to. If I'm welcome to come back, I'll come back. But kidneyresearchuk.org. Make certain if you've got any sort of thoughts on it, you should go and have a look at the website.
If you could do us one favour in return,
yes.
If just tell them about men's radio station and women's radio station, because every follow, every little tweet, every subscription to our YouTube channel really helps us. So you know, it's a quid pro quo, Clarice, quid pro quo. All right, thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much. Keep well. Bye.
What a great guy.
Wow.
That's what it's about. If I had to get like an interview, and if somebody had never seen us before and they say, what's it all about? I go, watch this guy. Because we touched on so much stuff. I want to can we mop up some of these wonderful comments, Phil?
Absolutely. Right. Where do we start? I mean, I know
bottom upwards. Andrea Lucas. They used to order Barbara. Now that's your daughter?
Barbara is Andy's daughter.
Okay. They used to order Barbara pizzas, etc., when she was in a private hospital, but the NHS are appalling, even when you have dietary needs. And Andrea says, well done, Tony, you're an inspiration.
Can I just point out, I feel that the NHS does get a bit of a bad rap. Well, hospitals in general get a bad rap when it comes to food.
It's the food. They don't get a bad rap in themselves.
No, I know, but when it comes to food, they get a very bad rap. And I understand why they do, because make no mistake, I've seen it it not firsthand, but I've certainly seen it secondhand, that the food, by and large, is revolting, absolutely disgusting. And I can't understand how on earth, if an idiot like me knows that nutrition is so flipping important to recovery and to health, that if you don't eat nutritious food whilst you're in a hospital environment,
it's kind of like the clue, isn't it?
It's going to drag out. You know, surely that's obvious that the longer you're in hospital for, and the longer you don't have nutritious and important food within you, well, guess what? It's probably going to drag on longer and ultimately cost more money. The way I look at it, it's a sound investment to invest in slightly better food. But anyway, let's not go on that because I'll be here all day. But,
well, then we can get into the whole thing of, which we're not going to discuss now. I will just touch on the sides of it, is all the fortunes spent on management. If you did a little less of the management, a little more on the food and the frontline staff who are actually there with the bandages, bedpans and everything else, you know, I think life would be a little bit better. Right, some more of these lovely comments, please. Ed Grossman, Tony, all the best to you. Andrea reacted heavily to the fact that when the nurse came in with the trainee doctor, she just buggered off. That's disgusting behavior on part of the nurse, blah, blah, blah.
Or marriage. My oncologist told me that with positive attitudes, they are easier to treat and often have better outcome. And I can well believe that. I have no knowledge whatsoever of oncology, but my God, I can well believe that.
I've mentioned it before, and I will mention it again. Deepak Chopra, who I have an enormous amount of respect for, when I attended a lecture of his, which he spoke for 2 hours without a single note in front of him, and was amazing, at the Royal Geographical Society many years ago. And he said that, you know, the brain is the greatest pharmaceutical producer on the planet. And if you have positive mental attitude, it releases certain chemicals in your system and it helps. Have a negative attitude and it won't help. Simple as that. Tony Green, this is so inspiring. Thank you. Well done, Tony. And thank you for chanting for Ebony's recovery. It's very sweet of you. I never know how these things work, but you did it and she's pretty good. So thank you very much. What have we got? Oh yeah, there's some people talking about the buffering.
Buffering,
which is not.
I hate to tell you, the buffering is probably not us, because if we don't buffer for each other,
then it's not us. It was Sue. Sue said, "Is it me or is the connection to the station going in and out like buffering? I just want to check it's my broadband." Sue, sorry to tell you, it's your broadband.
So the other thing you might like to try and do is, don't forget, you can always watch us on YouTube and Twitter as well if you have access to either of those. They are.
I will be back in 1 second. I just read the comments. I won't be a second.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, in that case, Russell will be back with us in just a moment's time, apparently, after the break. Who knew? Martin Allen says that my mum, who's now 80 and just overcome cancer for the 4th time, oh, Martin, wow, will say, why not me? At least I'm strong enough to not to give in. Martin, that's amazing, seriously, because you just there's somebody who we know, family friend of ours, who has had, I think she's had cancer 5 times. I think she's on her 5th time of having it. She's got the most incredible spirit. She's a very, very feisty individual and clearly has a lot of fight in her. And now I know that Tony did say that he didn't like the idea of using the word fight when it comes to talking about cancer. But I believe that actually from what I have seen, I believe fight is a big part of it, because you've got to have that will and that want to live. And if you don't, well, then arguably you'll just sort of succumb to it. But anyway, this particular family friend who, like I said, cancer for, I believe, the 5th time. And she is completely extraordinary. She just sort of gets on with it. It's almost as if she's just nipping out to have her hair done. It's that sort of attitude. It's, all right, well, I'm just going to get on with this and off I go. And I'll be back in a moment and carry on regardless. And I think
who was that?
I was saying it's a family friend of ours because I was just reading out a message from Martin, who was saying that his mother, who's 80, has just overcome cancer for the 4th time.
Wow.
So I was saying that it reminds me of this family friend of ours who's, I think, sort of, if she's not overcome it, she's certainly going through it for I think about the 5th time. And you just think, surely after twice, someone just thinks, I can't take this anymore. But maybe, who knows? Maybe you just sort of, if you have that will, that determination to live no matter what, then maybe it's enough to get you through. And bravo.
Totally agree. Sorry I had to disappear. I was freezing cold. Go figure. So I went to got my gilet.
Wow. Well, thank goodness for that. We're almost worried.
No, I switched the heat. Be honest, I switched the heating off in Studio 3, and I just suddenly thought, I'm absolutely freezing. Look, this is the world we live in, isn't it? Look, I go into my pocket. What are there? Rubber gloves. Life. Tony Green. Did you read this out, or has this just come in?
I didn't read Tony's comment.
More than welcome, she says. So happy she's better. We're talking about my dog. My cat. Here we go. My cats being ill always make me chant my socks up. Tony Green is a Buddhist and takes it very, very seriously. We're kind of vaguely related through sort of kids' marriages and things. My first cat had, this is a long thing, my first cat had kidney failure, age 1.5. She made 100% recovery. When I chatted to the nurse, she said she couldn't explain it, as she said she should have died. So sad, it has to have been she said it had to have been the chanting of, I'm not even going to try and pronounce this, highly recommend it. That man, Tony, who we just had, was so inspiring. But at the same time, I feel it's important to be compassionate with those who don't find, I can't read the rest of it because my screen goes.
And my understanding, by the way, is that particular chant, and I'm sure Tony's going to correct me, is it Nam Meo Ho Renge Keo?
I had that. It gave me indigestion.
Right.
I found the sauce a bit spicy.
Dear, yes, well, quite. No offense. Anyway, still, but yeah, absolutely. It is. I do like how a positive mental attitude can make a massive difference. And for me, I don't understand. I've said this before. I'll say it again because I just think it's important. I'm sorry to anyone who's heard this before, but I don't understand the argument when people say, if I think negatively, it means I avoid disappointments. But you don't avoid disappointments. All that happens is you actually drag the torture out.
It's a terrible philosophy. Well, if I think the worst is going to happen, then if anything better happens, it's better. What the hell kind of philosophy? You got to think it's all going to be, realistic, but you got to aim high. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, absolutely, says Paul Rose. I don't know what they're saying, and I don't know how to pronounce it. Somebody wants to phone in and announce it, and you're very welcome, because I can't do it properly. I'm not doing it justice. Glassy Amanda and Sue Cressman are having a bit of a love-in today because they're being very supportive of each other, which is lovely. I never dreamed when we started Men's Radio Station that ladies would comprise 50% of our audience. And thank you for doing that. It's great. Nearly perfect.
Can I just sorry that Tony's message, the rest of Tony's message that we didn't get to before, said that man Tony was so inspiring, but at the same time I feel it's important to be compassionate to those who don't find it easy to face such an awful illness with such an amazing attitude. Not everyone can. Quite right. Absolutely
right. How do you phone in? 0203290411 0203290411. That's how you do it.
Oh no, Tony's telling me off. Nearly perfect. Nam Myo, as in Tokyo. Ho Rengi Kyo rhymes with Tokyo. I'm a Jubu. She means
hardly knew anyone.
Hardly knew anyone Jewish before I was Buddhist, and now I know. Actually, funnily enough, Tony, I know a few people who consider themselves to be Jubu or Buju.
I don't even know what you're saying. What are you saying? You're suddenly talking tongues. What are you saying?
No, Jewish Buddhist.
A Jewish Buddhist?
That's what they call them, themselves Jubus or Bujus.
Yeah, it's just the catering's a bit better at events. That's it. Is that it? Ed Grossman. Hey, hello, Tony. That's amazing. Tony, it's on. Oh, you're listening.
The screen.
0203 290 4411. If I say it any slower, I'll be going into reverse. 0203 290 4411. But you refuse to play the great David Mingle jingle. That's your fault. I blame you.
Now, Tony, it would be lovely to speak to you, but I have to tell you that we're now about to speak to our next guest, so maybe we'll speak a bit later. That's all right. Because waiting in the digital green room now is Andre Radmal. Now, Andre is a psychotherapist and a life coach. My goodness me, I think we all need a bit of him. Andre, welcome to Men's Radio. Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, hi there. Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
You've got like a
you're in the mist.
Filter there. Are you in the mist? You've been smoking in there? What have you been doing there, Andre?
I'm in the smoking room today. Yeah, I'm sorry about this. Something's happened to my camera just in the last 5 minutes. So there's a bit of a mist on the screen.
I was more excited. I thought maybe you'd put a gel to give you that kind of Hollywood look, or you've been there with half an ounce of ready rub shag, and then
Yeah,
like
it has this effect every time.
It's dramatic.
It is very, very foggy where you are. Or the only possible alternative I'm thinking of is maybe you're rehearsing for Stars in Their Eyes.
Yeah. I think you've got me there.
Tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be a therapist.
Now, Andre, you're one of those chaps who has a bit of an alphabet after you, aren't you? Because you're Andre Radmal, MA, MSc, BA. I mean, are you going to leave any letters for anyone else, or?
Yeah, I just kind of started working through the alphabet, and that's as far as I got so far. Yeah, it's all off the back of a Kellogg's cornflakes packet, to be quite honest. But it works. It works.
No, Paul. I don't think wiping the lens is going to sort it. It's obviously it's not. I don't think the lens is dirty. I just think there's a connection issue or something.
It is.
Andre,
Martin Allen says Dallas.
Yep. Andre, this is really something. A life coach is something that really fascinates me because it seems to have a sort of an undercurrent of a similar meaning, but it seems to mean something different to each individual life coach. So what is it that you do that makes you a life coach? How do you help people?
Yeah. So my background is mostly in mental health work, and I'm trained predominantly as a psychotherapist. So when it comes to life coaching, it really is kind of helping people at points where they want to change something or where they need to change something, sort of pivot points in their lives, really. So a lot of the work is just helping people to get over that hurdle and to make the change that they might need to make because of all sorts of reasons. And obviously we're going through a period now where people are having to face all sorts of massive changes, maybe for the first time. So it's helping people work through the steps of change, really.
Have you noticed the big upsurge in the whole area of mental health during this ghastly year?
Yeah. I think it's really interesting to think of it in terms of the 3 lockdowns, actually, because what I've observed is that in the first lockdown, there was this kind of blitz spirit kind of approach where people were, doing lots of Joe Wicks workouts. The weather was good. For sure, it was really difficult for a lot of people, but there was that sort of sense of making the best of it and it will pass over. Now, when we're in the 3rd phase of this, in the 3rd lockdown, what I've observed is there's a lot less resilience in the system just across the board. I think people are worn out, they're tired, they're anxious, and I think the reserves have been depleted now. So everything's a bit more difficult, and that's before we get into the mental health side of it. So I think there has been more depression, there's more stress, and I think there's probably more addictions that we're going to see coming out of the back of this as well. Yeah.
When you say addictions, now this is something we don't shy away from on Men's Radio. So pharmaceutical addictions, drink addictions, gambling addictions, and which I want to come on to in a minute. Just want to ask you a question about that, and also addiction to gaming. When I say gaming, I don't mean money. I mean sitting there playing, I don't know, Xbox or any other of those games for days on end. Those are all addictions.
Yeah, they do something to the brain, which is that they stimulate the kind of pleasure reward center of the brain. And so if everything else around is looking pretty bleak or gloomy, then it becomes much more appealing than normal to basically check out and go into this alternative world, which games particularly provide. And I think what happens then is people get lost in that space potentially for hours and hours and hours without really realizing the passing of time. And that can get really addictive for sure.
We had a guest on, one of our very first guests on Men's Radio. In fact, I contacted him only a couple of days ago, called Cam Adair. Do you remember, Phil? Cam Adair?
Indeed.
And he would talk about gaming, and I had no idea. People would sit there and I don't want to be too graphic here, but people would sit there for days. They would not get up to go to the loo. And I thought he was kidding. But they could be there for 3-4 days. And I went, well, what do they do? When he told me, I nearly heaved. I thought, what the hell?
No, it's yes. I don't think we need to go into that side of things.
I think everyone's got the message, reading between the lines.
I was to say, but make no mistake, I think you don't need much of an imagination to work out how they combated said issue. But it's just my problem is that I don't have much of an addictive personality. You know, when people say they have a real addictive personality, that they can be introduced to something and suddenly they're hooked. And I've never found that. I find almost the opposite, where I get really bored really quickly. Does that mean that I'm abnormal, or should I just be grateful for being like that?
Well, I think it's great to be like that, because it means that you can put things down. So you might be able to pick them up, but you can put them down just as easily. And that is an asset, really, because I think what happens to some people that probably do have more of an addictive personality is it becomes harder and harder and harder to put the thing down, whether it's smoke, whatever it is, alcohol, pornography, drugs, gaming, whatever it is. I think that if it starts to replace other sources of well-being, particularly relationships with other people, then it becomes problematic, because it actually ends up disturbing and potentially destroying relationships with family, friends, partners, and so on. So yeah, if you can put it down, that's great.
Yeah, I'm loath to put you on the spot like this, but so feel free to tell me if you haven't got statistics to hand or anything like that. But how sort of proportionate is science to, say, personality? In other words, when it comes to addiction, is it a case of that mainly it's chemical reaction and therefore people genuinely can't help themselves, or is it that they just get the thrill out of it and therefore it's something that they do, it's habit, it's habitual almost? Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So is there sort of any particular proportion in terms of how people behave towards addiction, or is it different for everyone?
Well, I think it is different for everyone. I don't have any statistics about that, but my observation from working in this field is that a lot of people would probably be more on the habit end of the spectrum. If you like, I think it's a continuum actually between addiction at one end and habit in the middle, and then occasional usage at the other end. And probably the majority of people are somewhere between the middle and the more healthy end. I think where we get into the more difficult areas of addiction is usually when people have had some kind of some sort of deficit in terms of broken relationships, difficulties in connecting to other people for all sorts of reasons, and high levels of stress, of course, because a habit can then become an addiction if it's the only source of relieving stress. Usually you'd have a whole range of things that we can do to relieve stress, including relationships with others, which is really healthy, and friendships and so forth. But if it becomes locked into just one activity or one substance, then there's where the problem starts usually.
Andre, I'd like to read this from one of our listeners, viewers, from Glassy Amanda, who's in the therapeutic community. She says, I agree. At the start, it was like a blitz spirit, but every single therapy session I've done this week, all the people I'm working with have mentioned great anxiety. Yep. About having to mix socially again. Yep, that's affecting me, as a matter of fact. And they can't do small talk anymore. I never could. And are nervous about returning to workplace or school. And I'll give you my little twist on that, if I may, Andre, because I really like your view, is that, you know, a load of friends say, can't wait for such and such. Hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I'm sitting there reading it going, I ain't rushing. I'm just not rushing. What is your experience with wearing your professional hat on this?
Okay, so I think that what's happened is that we've become hardwired to be nervous of other people now, to a greater or lesser extent.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, just going to the park. We've got a park near where I live, and it's a bit of a dance, isn't it? You go.
I hate it. I hate it, Andre. I'm with you 100%. Walking the dog every day, I can come back in the most foul mood. No, it's meant to be good exercise. It's meant to be good for my head. And I'm coming back and I'm a wreck sometimes. I hate it.
Yeah, it's a constant stress, and we can't underestimate what effect that's having on us, doing that day after day after day.
Yeah.
You know, dancing around other people. And what's happened now, I think it's hardwired into our system that other people might be a threat. So I therefore think it's going to be a bit of a process to come out of this lockdown. And people are going to be pretty nervous about their kids going back to school. The kids are going to be nervous as well, actually, in some cases. We're going to be nervous about going back to places where we're mixing with other people. And I think, therefore, it really has to be a step-by-step process of reacclimatizing to just dealing with the fear of other people, actually, which is much higher now than it would have been before.
You know, it's a weird thing. But, you know, the walking the dog situation, which is the only time I get out, you're really right. Anyone comes near me, I'm like, oh, no, you know, I feel myself tensing up, which it's ridiculous. I mean, I know it. You know, the logical, rational part of me thinks, well, this is ridiculous, Russie, stop it. And I can't help it. I really can't. I just wonder if we're all getting horribly institutionalized.
I think we've become institutionalized by fear. So what happens is that we start off on this by thinking, oh, there's a person, I just need to go around that person. And then after a few months of this, it's not even a thought. It's just an instinct to recoil and to pull back. It's not even something we're thinking about anymore. It's just a knee-jerk reaction. So it's dropped down into the level of our sort of neural pathways in our brains now. So to come out of that is going to be quite a job, I think, and it will take time.
What sort of, you know, you're a professional. What sort of time frame would you put on that?
Well, I mean, I think that there's a tendency in the way this is talked about to go much too fast, to be honest. I think we need to give ourselves a little bit of time here. I'd say at least a month to reacclimatize. But I think it's more likely somewhere between a month and 3 months to really get back into a sense of what things might have been like before, from the point of view of not avoiding people anyway. And I think it's little steps at a time. Just like when people become phobic about spiders or something, you have to kind of reintroduce that thing one bit at a time, going one step nearer to the thing each time.
I have to say, Andre, I'm quite relieved to hear you say about between a month and 3 months.
Yeah, I don't see that.
I've said from the word go that I wholeheartedly believe before life returns to what we would consider relative normality, and I'm not talking about this awful term, this cliche, the new normal. To hell with that. I don't mean that. I mean, if you talk about life returning to some semblance of normality where someone goes out without even thinking about it, wholeheartedly, I believe summer 2023. I think this is...
Do you know what, Phil? I agree with you. I'm with you on this. I don't see the month. We're not experts. We're broadcasters and writers. That's what we do. But I think I can't speak for anybody else, but my readjustment will be, I think, pretty long. pretty painful. I think some people are going to get really pissed off with me and say, let's do this. And I'm going to be going, no, I'm not. I don't want to do this. Glassy Amanda, as I said, is in the therapeutic community. And this is so telling. Love your take on this, Andre, please. You're both right. Rarely get out, but the other day went for a walk. A jogger, don't get me started, Amanda. A jogger crept up on me and got so close they touched my shoulder. So I deck them. So I have a complete Tourette, sweary, shouty 5 minutes at them. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Have you noticed as well?
Yes.
Sorry, I'd say it's not so much just the fact that they're schwitzing themselves to death. It's when they run past.
Panting.
Exactly. I was just saying, it's the what the hell
Was that you who phoned me the other day?
Yes. Thank you.
Smithy bastard. This is the truth. It's this panting. It's like, and you think, jeez, I'm doing everything I freaking can and have done for a year. Could you just piss off? You know, go the other side of the road. God's sake, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think that is a good example of how stressed we are as well, because that is triggering this reaction, this Tourette's, as she said, sort of reaction of whatever. That's what happens when you're stressed up to the eyeballs. That's what happens when you're really just one hair's breadth away from losing it anyway, to start with. And then someone comes into your space like that with no respect, just completely disregarding your personal space. It just makes people furious.
It does. I'm shocked, Andre, and I'm happy to admit it, that the sheer level of my fury. I shock myself at the level of rage I feel when people are now I call it invading my. It's a pavement. Everyone's entitled to be there. I get it. It's not my pavement, but it feels like a real invasion of my personal privacy and my personal space. And I'm shocked, actually, at my reaction to it. I'm not happy about it. I'm not proud of it, but it's the truth. It's how I am.
Yeah. It's almost like there's this sense of no fear somehow comes over when anger takes over. I feel as though there's almost this sense of no fear. So just as an example, I know that there's been occasions when I've seen people who walk within reasonable proximity to me not wearing a mask. And okay, sorry, I'm talking in an indoor environment. Obviously, in an outdoor, it's very different. But in an indoor environment in the supermarket, and it's not unheard of for me just to turn to somebody and shout the word mask. I just think, what's wrong with me? I don't do that.
Or any other Jim Carrey film.
Yeah, but I'm normally I consider myself a reasonably dignified person, and I don't think that I would actually gob off like that normally, but I do when it comes to this, and I don't know why.
I've got an idea. This is what I've been doing. I yell, no mask, eh? And if anyone looks, I go, namaste. And it diffuses the situation.
Yeah.
Why are we so, Andre, why are we so, all right, let me ask another question. Sorry, it's a bigger question. We have been conditioned in an incredibly short time to think and be rewired. It's a shock. It's a huge shock how human nature has been reconditioned like this.
Mm-hmm.
Did you, as a professional, would you have thought this was possible in just a few months to do this?
No, I'm surprised by it as well, because it takes so long to recondition people's ways of thinking and doing things. Usually, under normal circumstances, you're definitely talking years usually. Yeah. So for this to all kick off and happen so fast is just unbelievable and unprecedented, I would think, as well. It is shocking, and I think that the shock is the right word to describe it, or another word you could say would be a form of trauma, actually, that everybody's actually going through. And I think because we're so shocked and traumatized by all of this, we're out of control, and that's why I think the anger comes up, because when people feel out of control and fearful, anger is actually one way of saying, right, okay, now I'm going to do something about this. Now I'm going to say something. Now I can exert some form of control over this bit of Tesco, which I'm in, while someone's standing opposite me with no mask on, you know, because at least in that moment I can push back. But the rest of the time, it's just like blancmange. Where do you push back? What can you do? You can't do really very much.
It's like punching a blanket. Nothing happens, is it?
Yeah.
It's really what it is. Tony Green says, she's a lady, by the way, because in case you can't see it, in case you think it's a bloke, I become the grumpy witch from hell. No change there, Tony. In supermarkets, if people A, don't socially distance, and B, spend forever deciding what kind of strawberries they want.
Yeah.
Oh man, that does my head in. What are you staring at the tin? You never seen the tin before? Put the tin in your basket, bugger off. You know, don't just stand there. You're not in an art gallery. You're not looking at Cézanne or Kandinsky or something.
Hang on. I do need to slightly stand up for the strawberry pickers amongst us.
Oh, come on.
No, hang on, because if I'm honest, there's nothing you want that's worse than when you get back, you've bought a nice box of strawberries that look, they're very carefully and very precisely placed in the punnet, and you just have a look and you see, then you take one out and then suddenly there's a bit of mold right in the middle. You've got to be careful with these things, you know.
I hate you. On how long, Andre, do you think, oh, God, is there any advice? This is a crazy question, I know, but is there any advice you can give for how we're going to eventually readapt and come back into civilization? What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be done slowly, and I think because there's so many areas of life that are out of control and are almost been off limits pretty much for a while. I mean, I live just outside London, and I've not been into London for the best part of a year now, I think. And I used to go in quite frequently. I think that if I'm going to go back into London, I need to, just take it easy really, and not rush back into something. And I think we need to be very kind to ourselves at this point, because we need to think of this as a whole, I suppose it's a whole world really, but we are recovering from a mass trauma. We're recovering like someone who's been in an accident or something, and needs that time to recuperate. So I think the key word is time. The second word is to just do little bits of things that we can control in our lives, and regain that sense of having some control over things.
Tell you something about going into London, Andre, is this. I was so bored of walking the dog in the same place, although I like where I am. I'm a couple of miles from Tower Bridge. So I drove into central London. It was sensational. There was nobody there. And I could wander around, and, Berkeley Square was empty and Bond Street was empty. And the places which are normally packed, absolutely empty. It's great. So it was weird. The suburbs are like Piccadilly Circus. And you get to Piccadilly Circus and you're on your own. So it's a kind of weird transversing of the concept of what going into town means, isn't it?
Yeah. I think the other thing I'd say about resuming some sort of normality is it's going to take a while to resume just relationships with people and pick up on simple things. I mean, I used to meet my friends in the pub now and again. I mean, I haven't done that for a year. It's just recognizing, I think, that each of these steps is quite a step to take, and not thinking, we can rush into it or it'll all be back to normal. I think that the media sometimes kind of perpetuates this idea that once we hit these dates in the timetable coming up, that everything will kind of revert back to what it was.
Nonsense.
It's absolute nonsense.
But people are buying into this, and they pick a date, it's going to be, and I'm thinking, what are you, this is like the mentality of can't wait for 2020 to be finished, because in January, and I'm thinking, do you think the virus or life thinks, oh, look, the calendar's changed, I'm going to be somebody completely different? Of course it doesn't. It's mad. It's kind of mass deception. I think certain things are going to change forever. I don't think I will ever shake, and I'm putting it out there. I don't think I'll ever shake hands again. Something you take for granted. I don't think I'll ever shake hands with anybody ever again. I'm not sure about the hugging. I don't think so.
Mm.
I think it's gone.
I think the other thing that's likely to happen this is really an emotional or mental health issue, is what happens when there's been a crisis or an emergency is that people tend to just hold on all the way through it. It's like holding your breath, really. And then when the danger has passed a little bit, not completely, but just when it starts to die down, that's when all the feelings that have been held in start to come out. So I think when we start to see things return to some semblance of not normality, but things change for the better, I think we might see a lot of people then kind of letting out all the feelings they've been holding on to for the last year. And that's where I think you'll get a bit more of the anxiety, depression kind of experiences coming to the fore.
Now, Phil Dave, with his brain like a planet, a year ago said,
Brain
that,
like a planet. What?
Yeah. No, I'm actually being nice for once.
Make distance.
He was the first. We had our studio before I closed it down, but because of health reasons, obviously, and safety. Said the side effects from this are going to be much worse than the illness. Not if you've died, obviously, and if you've got relatives and parents who've died from it. We're very, very sensitive to that. You know us by now. The NHS was struggling anyway with what it could offer for mental health. The waiting list was heavy. How on earth, Andre, as a professional, are they ever going to cope with the what is waiting now?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the answer to that is, because the NHS is obviously being overstretched, not just stretched, but overstretched. And like a lot of other issues, mental health has not had there just hasn't been the time, the space, or the capacity to deal with mental health issues during this period that's necessary. And it will only get, I'm afraid to say, I think it will only get worse in that sense, because there'll be more people coming forward with mental health issues, I think, that they've been holding on to and just about coping with through this period. And a lot of the professionals may themselves have been traumatized as well. So they may have less capacity to deal with it. And there isn't the resources there to start with anyway in the NHS to deal with mental health. So I don't have a very happy answer to that, to be honest.
It's going to be huge. This is why we've never been busier on MRS here. You touched on something so interesting there, Andre, because we always assume that, doctors or nurses, that somehow they're from a different planet and they're immune to the crap that we're feeling and the stuff that we go through. Well, of course, they're human. So one of our guests was Wingman. Well, actually, we had two guests called Wingman. One was a dating service. They were lovely. And the other is Wingman, which is former people who were in the aviation industry who are just going round to hospitals. Hospitals are setting aside a room, and the Wingman people go in and talk to the staff who are stressed off their faces. They have a cup of tea, literally, it's so wonderfully English, isn't it? They have a cup of tea and a biscuit, and they kind of decompress. And we don't think about the problems that the staff are going through. It's all about, me, rather than, well, they've got all their own baggage as well.
They have a lot of, even now, NHS staff are showing signs of PTSD, and they're going to need quite specific help and treatment to get through some of that. They've been through essentially something not that different to being in a war zone, really. And I think that one of the things you've touched on there, actually, which I feel has some mileage in it, is self-help groups and people getting together in groups where they can just have some space to share their experiences. Because I think from a professional point of view, there just isn't very much in the system. So maybe at best what professionals can do, people like me, I suppose, is facilitate kind of places where people can meet in networks and just share their experience and get some things off their chest, really, that they need to talk about.
Kind of what we've been...
Andre, where do people go if they want more information about you? It pains me, but we're sort of rapidly running out of time, and I don't want us to sort of lose the opportunity to find out more if we need to. So where do people go?
Yeah, so for people to get through hold of me, I'm at Andre Radmall. That's RADMALL.com.
Excellent.
And if you would, I said it to our last guest, and if you would do us the courtesy of spreading the word about men's radio station and women's radio station, subscribe on our YouTube channel. Because every little bit really does help us go forward. We're smaller, we're trying to take on giants here, and we're a small, tight operation. But the more we can spread the word, the better it is. I'd be grateful.
No problem.
Anything that we can do, by the way, if you're thinking about those groups and anything we can do to facilitate that, you know where we are, you know how to reach us. So use us as a resource. You'll be very, very welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much indeed, Andre Radmel. It's been a great pleasure to meet you, and do come back and speak to us again soon, won't you?
I will.
Please,
I loved it.
please do.
Thanks very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Interesting comments from Ed Grossman. Russ, people are holding back their mental health issues because it will affect insurance premiums. Christ, yes, of course. House, car, etc. So I'm told, and I've read about it. Martin Allen. Oh, this is backing up what I said about you, Philip. I believe I may have been one of the last guests you had in the studio when you had our studios in Covent Garden. I recall very well Phil saying the fallout from COVID-19 then, and he's right. Ed Grossman says, Russ, hold on, looking forward, gives many people hope. Yeah, I understand that. I understand that.
I don't enjoy being right on this issue. I mean, no
one's saying that. You're not crowing. No, you're not crowing about it. You're not crowing about it. But I remember us disagreeing, and I just realized you were much smarter about it than I was. End of story. I think that's the truth of it. There. What can be washed in salt water? Andrea Lucas. What? It can be washed in salt water. What? Strawberries?
I was going to say, we're talking about the strawberries again. Because
no.
Tony Green says, oh no, Phil, you're one of them.
I've thought that for a long time, Tony. Be honest with you.
You're right.
I suspicions.
I am a snob when it comes to berries. I'm also a bit of a snob when it comes to television, but luckily...
Hey, do you want to run that by again? Because that was so silky smooth, it's worthy of rewriting. Go on.
Rewind. I'm also a bit of a snob when it comes...
Phil, were you talking of strawberries?
Okay, so I might be a bit of a snob when it comes to strawberries, but I'm also a snob when it comes to television. And luckily... I know, right? It's almost like I've got this radio thing down. I'm telling you.
What a freaking pro he is.
Shocking. But luckily, someone's even more professional than me. It's Chantal Rickards. Hello, Chantal. Oh, dear. Chantal, you've chosen to mute yourself. You have to unmute yourself, apparently. There we go.
Hello.
Hi.
There you are.
Oh.
There you are. Right. Let's have a big picture of Chantal and tiny pictures of us, because it's...
Okay.
Just myself. No, don't do that. I hate that. Thank you.
Then I just thought for a second there, maybe we might be equals to the guests, but no, alas, it's not to be. But it doesn't matter because
it's a better idea. I like being a postage stamp. I have to look at myself.
It's time.
Oh, hang on. Yes.
For this. Oh yeah, it's time to get all square-eyed because the font of knowledge that is all things silver screen.
Helvetica 12.
Well, actually, I wanted to start with the radio, which I know is a bit peculiar. But
sorry,
I'm going to start with a radio station called KACL.
Yeah, but I haven't got I Love Radio. That's not going to work. We haven't got We Love Radio, Chantal.
No.
What do we do?
No.
Just go with it. I think people will stay with. I think they'll stay with.
Well, the wonderful world of television and radio came together at a radio station called KACL. Does that ring a bell?
Was that the one in Fraser?
Correct. It was Fraser. Well done, because I was going to tell you that Frasier is coming back. And of course, men's radio station is about men's mental wellness, as we know, and how wonderful that is. But of course, Dr. Frasier Crane, one of the best ever comedy characters, played by Kelsey Grammer from a good 20 years ago, was a radio psychiatrist. And I thought it was just a nice way of talking about television and radio combined, but also about the wonderful work that you guys do on MRS, because it is indeed incredibly important. Okay. And I listened to what Andre had to say about what's going to happen after we all get back together. But one thing I was going to add to what he said, because often I think I've talked about mental wellness and grief. I think that what might be different this time round is that there's going to be a shared grief. And I think shared grief will be easier to cope with than when you're coping with individual grief when somebody has died. So I throw that in for good measure, not as an expert, because I'm not, but I just thought that that shared experience of what everybody's been through, I think will be really helpful in letting people sort of understand it and work a way through it.
Now I have a question
about the return of Fraser, but
Frasier.
But I don't think I'm going to know. I don't think that it's going to work. John Mahoney was just hilarious, and I'm not. I don't think it's going to work without him.
John Mahoney played the dad.
He was from Manchester, which always floored me. He was
incredible. Yeah, I mean, it was a wonderful cast, a very different cast. You know, people from hither and thither. David Hyde Pierce as the brother, Niles. Yeah. Jane Leaves as the sort of nanny come housekeeper, but none of them are attached. And clearly, as you say, that wonderful character of the father, the actor, is no longer alive, which is a pity. So Paramount Plus have just announced it. We don't know where it's going to go yet, but it is happening. So, and I think Kelsey Grammer's been trying for 20 years to get it off the ground. That's the last time we saw it.
You're a TV expert, both in here and in the States, with a long career. I always get when I read about this and people going, yeah, I get very twitchy when something that you've loved and is kind of preserved in aspect, and then it comes back, because it's always a freaking disappointment. I'll give you a silly example, and this is how I'll tell you how strongly I feel about it. People for years were saying, oh, let's get the Capital Breakfast Show back. It'd be great. Be you, be Chris. We'd probably try and drag in Cara from LA. It'd be great. And my immediate reaction, Chris Terrence was the same, but absolutely don't want to do it. Absolutely don't want to do it. It was then. It was fun, but people's expectations would be, oh, let's all pretend it's, 1988. Well, it's not. I worry, but bringing back Frasier, you think, oh, was it actually that fun? I mean, it was a brilliant series.
It was one of the, but I mean, I think if you look at all the Emmys and Golden Globes that it won, it was absolutely undoubtedly one of the most celebrated comedies, American comedies, that went around the world, sold everywhere, and is an iconic piece of television. But you're right, it might not work. I mean, Kelsey Grammer clearly is going back, so it's not as if it's a different cast and you're trying to do something without at least the main character. But who knows where it's going to go? I think it's going to be really interesting to see what the writers do with it.
Oh, I tell you one thing, though. I flipping loved the apartment he lived in. Blooming.
Absolutely. And Seattle then was really not a great city. Seattle now is an incredibly beautiful city. And who knows, but he certainly had a wonderful apartment. You're quite right about that.
With the chair, and he goes, can't we move the chair? It's eclectic. Great line. The interesting thing is that both Frasier and Niles were really just horrible, snobby pains in the arse. Yeah. Really, they were just terrible people.
Yeah, but we did laugh at them. I mean, that's the good thing. We laughed at them.
We did, because they were both geniuses, and they had no self-awareness, which was, I think, just part of the subtlety and the layering of the writing. It was just brilliant.
It's sort of, if you think about it, probably a part of an inspiration for a character. And I know that characters such as Doc Martin is obviously a bit sillier, but it's kind of sort of that premise, isn't it? That sort of a really clever person who's just got no ability to be around or / communicate with others.
House.
Indeed.
House.
Indeed.
Of course. Do you know why it's called House?
Well, he was called Gregory House, wasn't he? That was his surname.
Where did we get the inspiration to call him House?
It wasn't an acronym, was it?
Ooh, I don't know.
If another name for a house is a home.
Yes.
Sherlock
Holmes. Really?
You'll find there's somebody called Watson in the program as well.
Oh, well, you've told me something I didn't know.
Great comment from Ed Grossman. Chantal, the Britney Spears documentary was excellent. Thank
Oh,
you.
good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah,
Creepy.
creepy. Was a
Yeah.
bit creepy and a bit sad, and a story of our times, but definitely worth watching. So well done for watching that. But Russ, I was going to talk to you about a show that I watched last night because I wanted your opinion on it specifically. Not that I don't want Phil's, but I think having seen you do stand up, having seen you do stand up, I wanted to mention the start of a documentary series for Stand Up for Cancer on Channel 4, which started last night on Channel 4, where they take 5 celebrities and who've never done stand up and match them up with 5 stand up British comics, and then they're given a 2-week period in which they have to come up with a 5-minute skit. So I was just wondering, A, whether you'd seen it, and B, whether you wanted to tell us a bit about your experience of stand-up, because you're still relatively new to it.
I haven't seen it, but I can do much worse. Many, many years ago, I was taken out to lunch, and in the days when we had long luncheons, which you recall, Chantal. It was a lovely summer day, and the Gavy de Gavy was flowing like Niagara Falls. And I didn't know the other people, and they said, "What we're doing? We're from Melvin Bragg's The South Bank Show." I said, "Oh yes, Barbara."
After the South Show.
Do you remember the South Bank Show? Well, and we're doing a special. It's called The A to Z of British Comedy, and I'm sitting there like an idiot, going, "Oh yes." And what we're looking for is someone who's kind of used to talking to people, done a bit of camera work, but has never done stand-up. I'm like a moron. I said yes.
Really?
I said yes. Now, I had to go through going to comedy school, which was horrific, going to various comedy things, which was horrific, and it culminated in appearing live at Jongleurs, run by Maria Kempinska, who's come back into our lives because she broadcasts on Men's Radio Station now. And if you don't know who Maria was, she started the whole of this comedy thing, and she ran with enormous success the whole of the Jongleurs chain. In the run-up to doing the stand-up, I'm going back many, many years now. It had to be at Battersea at Jongleurs.
Yeah.
I lost a stone in weight that week. A stone.
Wow.
I was a nervous wreck. How did the performance go? It was a 4-camera shoot. It was Friday night. The audience were pissed. The people introducing us were horrible. The people in the green room were truly horrible. Horrible. I'll never forgive them. One guy I've never spoken to since. People said, "Why don't you work with?" Because I will never speak to him again.
Oh.
I will quote the words of Julie Burchill. "Not since Lee Harvey Oswald has one man died in front of so many people." It was the worst professional experience of my life.
Oh my
It was
God,
made worse by the fact I had to come off stage where I had died the worst death
no.
and be interviewed. And how was it? Oh, it was great. The crap you put on, phony baloney. I'd never do it now. I hid, and I'm not making this up, I hid in bed for several days because relatives had turned up, friends had turned up, and for years later, they didn't tell me, actually, we were in the audience. We never told you. I hid in bed.
Oh,
And for anyone who wants to watch this, by the way, it's available now on BBC iPlayer.
Then I get a phone call from the producers of the show. I go, "Yeah." They go, "Russ." And I'm going, "I know. And please don't. I know." They said, No. What we've done, we've edited your section. Oh, okay.
yeah.
And we've intercut it with shots of people who were actually laughing at somebody else, not you. Yeah. It looked fantastic.
No. Is that true?
Yeah, I swear to God, it's absolutely true. So I go, oh, it's going to look great. So now I get out of bed. I've been in bed 2-3 days. That's how depressed I was destroyed, right? And then I said, well, this is okay. I live to fight another day. Melvin Bragg, this was a 2-hour special. Melvin Bragg decides he wants to be in the show.
Okay.
You can see where this is going, Chantal. I then get another phone call. Russ, yeah, I'm really sorry. Yeah, we're taking your whole section out.
Oh,
Oops.
Barry Cryer's whole set. Barry Cryer, the god of comedy. And so I said, well, can I have at least have the the thing for a tape? Oh well, I'm afraid it was on Avid, which was an editing system, and we just wiped it.
Oh,
good Lord.
So the long answer to your question is this, Chantal. I did not do. I didn't go back on stage for I think 20 plus years until the
Wow.
wonderful Penny Horner at German Street Theatre said, "You're doing it," and I said, "No, I'm not." And she physically stood up. She went to the German Street Theatre marker board with the schedule, put my name in, and said, "Right, that's when you're performing." But that's how shocking it was. Even thinking about it now, and I discuss it with Maria Kempinska, who ran it. I was an idiot for even thinking I could do it. It was horrible. I can't describe how horrible, and it put me off for 20, 25 years before I could go back on a mic on stage.
Wow.
So that's my long answer to your question.
Well, it's a very good answer because it actually.
Well, the funny thing is, you only wanted a yes or no, didn't you? But anyway,
I don't
Tony Green says, not been here for ages. This is such a wonderful show. Mazel tov to you both. Thank you, Tony. You're very kind. Thank you. But she also goes on to say that there is nothing more scary and terrifying and frightening in every other adjective than stand-up. Understand the nervous wreck thing. My first gig, goes on to say, I again chanted my socks off. And then she says that she... again, chanted her socks off, and then said that it was amazing. Next one, wondered, why do I do it? Feel sick, want to faint. It goes well. It's wonderful. If it does, it's vile. I've also died a serious death at Hampstead Comedy Club. Jewish Christmas shows, 8 minutes, not even a titter, just a load of bored, blank faces. Oops. And you know what? Anyone who in the vague past, anyone who's ever said to me, well, have you ever considered doing stand-up? No, I have not. I would very...
Penny Horner's commenting and she says, oh, yes, I did. And it was Penny. I just went in. Everything in life is an accident, right? I was just sitting, because we're friends. We've known each other forever. So I just went around, had a cuppa with Penny in the thing, and an actor came in. There was some play they were putting on, and he was in full sort of military uniform, like a hussar. He said, I'm just going on the stage to go through my life. He was terrible. He was lovely. And off he went. I took the piss, as I do with sort of everything. And I said, yeah, Pen, I can't wait for my own one-man show as a joke. And that was it. Boom, we were off. And the rest, as they say, is history. And you came to see it in Santa Monica. And I love doing it now. I'll never do it again.
Hey, speaking of history, I'm watching reruns of a show that, Chantal, I feel like I need to confess to you. I'm fully prepared to be lambasted, so get it over and done with. I've discovered reruns of Homes Under the Hammer.
Oh, well, it's a great show. Why not?
I personally love it. But yet, whenever I tell people this, they say, are you being serious? You actually watch reruns? Isn't it bad enough you have to watch the current series? You watch reruns of it? But I believe there's got to be a reason why. I believe it's the BBC's longest running daytime program, if I'm not mistaken. Or it's certainly
could be.
If it isn't the longest, it's certainly one of the longest running daytime programs, because I'm fairly sure it started in the early noughties. So it's got to be, it has to have been going at least 17, 18 years.
Definitely. Yeah.
If that's the case, I think they're doing something right. But it might be it's just a case of people are too sort of proud to admit they watch it, but I'm not, and I find it brilliant. I really I get very frustrated though when they don't show the complete project. When they, for those who don't know, so by the way, Homes Under the Hammer is pretty much as it sounds, is when properties are sold at auction, you follow the story of the person who bought the property at the auction, how much they paid for it, what they've done to the property, and how much it's worth, whether it's they're renting it out or whether they've sold it at the end of it. Anyway, it really frustrates me when they say, we return 9 months later, and then whoosh, nothing's changed. You just think, why did you bother returning then?
The diary.
No, it's good. I mean, BBC Daytime have always, and Channel 4 Daytime, but the pair of them have always made lots of really good daytime shows, like, Place in the Sun and Cash in the Attic. Just great old chestnuts. And if they're around, why not watch them? I mean, they're very well constructed pieces of television.
Well, Ed Grossman says that for him it's location, location, location. So there you go.
Well, there we are. Yeah.
I think he means the other Phil. Right. Kimmy Lashmar is getting us back on track. She says, what is Chantal suggesting for the weekend?
Yeah, indeed. Well, yes, Kimmy ought to come in and help produce the show because she's absolutely right. I want to rattle through a few things. So if you haven't caught up with the beginning of series 4 of Unforgotten on ITV, you absolutely have to. You can watch series 4 without having watched anything that's gone on previously, but actually they're all on the ITV player. If you haven't watched them, you should. Nicola Walker is a cop. She is also, I think, one of the best actresses in the UK. And Sanjeev Bhaskar is her partner in the cop station. She's been away on leave for 6 months on sabbatical and is just coming back into the workplace. He gets called to the scene of a crime, which is in Haringey in North London, and they find a body inside a fridge. So it's a real cold case, a proper cold case.
Hey, quite
literally, boom. And the story goes on from there. But the acting is incredibly good. They are two very accomplished actors, and they're brilliant together. It's a wonderful partnership on screen. They're only 6-parters, so that you can rattle them off in a weekend. But I would, so that you don't miss out on the whole treat, go back to the beginning of Unforgotten from 3 years ago and start there. And then catch up with season 4 that's just started on ITV.
I'm such a fan of that show that I, since the beginning, have been in contact nearly every day with Chris Lang, who.
Oh, really? Who's the writer? Yeah.
Writer, and Sanjeev Bhaskar, because I go on about the backpack and I want to be the manager of the backpack and how it's got its own series coming out. The backpack actually has its own fan club. Extraordinary. Now, the one thing I would say, because everybody was moaning to Chris, why can't we binge watch it like we did with The Bay, like I did, thanks to your recommendation, spent an entire weekend going through 12 episodes on 2 series. They're still in post-production. That's why you can't do catch up on ITV. You can only watch it 1 episode at a time, which to us who need everything instantly feels like we're 1955 again, but that's the reason why.
Speaking of feeling like you're 1955 again, I'm afraid Graham from Bushy on Twitter is not as enthusiastic of our liking for Frasier. He says Ross, Kane, Phil, Dave, Chantal, Frasier was about as funny as a boil on the backside is the most polite way I'm going to put it. So there you go. I fear that we haven't got a fan in Graham and Bushy, but there you go.
No, I think, Graham, that's absolutely fine. I personally think that Cheers was funnier than Frasier. And of course, that's where the character started, was in Cheers with Ted Danson, based at the pub Cheers in Boston. And I personally think that was better. And I still watch that. It's on Channel 4 every morning. I do my Keep Fit class every morning, and I have Cheers on in the background at 7:30 a.m. and it cheers me up no end.
Hang on a second. Is that a sort of a here's what you could have won moment? You're doing a fitness class and you're looking at a load of people in a pub. It's like you're torturing yourself even more, saying, right, hang on, well, you're fixing yourself here. That doesn't matter. This is what you could have been doing. Oh, you are a glutton for punishment, Chantal.
I'm going to shove in very, very quickly McBillions. McBillions. The most riveting documentary I've seen in forever. 6 parts, I believe. I think it's 6 parts. Sensational. I can't praise it high enough. It's an HBO documentary produced by Mark Wahlberg.
Was this the one that Chantal, you told us about months and months ago? Where it was
a long time ago, and I only saw it the other day, and it was absolutely fantastic.
And it's about the sort of the what's it? It's sort of competition side of McDonald's. Is that it?
Absolutely, Phil. You've remembered it exactly. It's a very good documentary series about the people who run competitions for McDonald's, and that there was all sorts of jiggery pokery going on. People
not by McDonald's. We are very quick to point out McDonald's were not complicit, nor did they know, and they cooperated fully with the FBI.
Indeed. Yeah, it was farmed out, as a lot of these things always are in the sort of promotions world, farmed out to a third-party company where there was jiggery pokery. But it's a great documentary. It's worth seeing. You really begin to understand quite a lot about the machinations of an incredibly big, powerful organization. So yes, well worth watching.
It's
Chantal,
basically
what
the
else have you got?
basically
We've got about 5 minutes
Okay.
left. I'm very aware that we're going to sort of chew into your time of talking to us. So what have you found?
Well, I was going to say, for those that haven't seen Homeland and never really bothered with it, the last and final series has just hit Netflix. So if you want a really, really chunky political thriller series, you could go all the way back to the beginning of Homeland and then take yourselves all the way through 8 years worth of what was one of the most successful Fox television productions, fronted by Claire Danes, and originally Damian Lewis, the British actor, who plays an American who's been captured by Al Qaeda. And he comes back into America, and Claire Danes is working for the CIA, and she suspects that he might not quite be everything that he suggests, which is the all-American hero coming back after being captured by Al Qaeda. It was incredibly well written. It came from an Israeli series called Hostages, Prisoners of War, I think it was called, and then later called, the literal translation was Hostages. And it's really worth seeing. Claire Danes is bipolar. Her character is incredibly well played because it's a really in-depth portrayal of somebody going through the awfulness of being bipolar. But she always sort of wins out in the end. Great other characters in it. F. Murray Abraham, Mandy Patinkin. I mean, really, it's worth seeing, and it's worth going back to the beginning and starting again.
Now,
He hated being in Criminal Minds.
I hate to
He
tell you,
did. I told you that. Yep, indeed, he did.
but Andy Lucas has said, I fell asleep during Murder at the Cecil Hotel. Oh, dear.
Oh,
Andrea,
okay.
Andrea, come on. It was great.
I personally didn't recommend the Murder at the Cecil Hotel. I think it was a hard watch, and it didn't really go anywhere, to be honest. It just felt like it was a rather sad story. But, it was a Ron Howard production, but fair enough. But if you want to see something that's a bit more real, that's slightly in the same vein, then you should try the BBC Two documentary. We're up to episode 3, which is called Forensics, The Real CSI. So if that's your thing and you actually want to know what really happens with those guys and girls who goes to crime scenes, then watch that. It's BBC Two. It's very thoughtful. It feels more like a sort of Open University documentary series than something that's sensational. It isn't sensational at all, but if you're interested in the science behind it, it's great.
Quick question, Chantal. I can just sneak this in. So it's from Ed Grossman. Chantal, you suggested Celebrity. I can't find it. Help.
Celebrity.
I don't know, Ed. You're going to have to expand on that because I don't know what show that was.
I can't think what that is.
Chantal, we have about 2 minutes. So what else have you got for us?
2 minutes. Go back and absolutely cheer yourself up with a film that is a million years old called Educating Rita, which was nominated for 3 Oscars in 1983, I think. Michael Caine and Julie Walters. Julie Walters playing a 26-year-old girl. It's comedy heaven. It is Willie Russell, beautifully written. So all set in a northern university town where Michael Caine is this rather jaded English professor, and in bounces the gorgeous Julie Walters. It's perfection and really worth watching even after all this time.
I might suggest one of the most phenomenal soundtracks as well.
Indeed. Yeah. Very good.
Do you remember listening to that? My father used to play the album on loop in the car on the way.
Oh, really?
So, I mean, I've just got the going through my head all the blooming time. So, I mean, don't get wrong, it's terrific, though.
It's brilliant. BBC iPlayer, and definitely worth a Saturday afternoon on the sofa to watch it.
Excellent stuff. Got time for any quick
Over and above that, I would say, well, if you want something very quirky, look at a Netflix series called Midnight Diner. It's Japanese. I don't think I've ever offered up a Japanese suggestion before, but it's a very well written but extremely quirky series about a chef in a diner and the 12 people who come in to get their food each evening. I'm not going to say any more because it's a sort of hidden jewel, and it's really worth taking a look. Midnight Diner on Netflix.
Good title. I like that. Good title. Okay. Is it subtitles?
It is subtitles. It's Japanese. It is a Japanese production. Yep. But
I've on Netflix as well. Speaking of Netflix, I've tried to start watching a comedy called Superstore. Don't know if you're familiar with this. It's actually sort of a series that came out in 2015, but started watching it again. It's released now on Netflix, 2015 onwards. It's I think I'm getting it. Not sure yet. Not sure.
I'm loving it. Yeah. I'll tell you a bit more about it next week, but I think
it's going to have to be next week. Chantal, thank you so much. Regret flat out of time, but have a great week. Thank you as always.
Yeah, have a good weekend.
Stay safe.
Bye, Chantal.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Oh, there we go. That's it for today. Amazing lineup. Thank you very much to Henry Gridley, Tony Harding. Tony, we love Tony. He was amazing. Thank you. Andre Radmill as well. And of course, Chantal Rickards. Russell, should we do this all over again on Monday?
Rude not to.
It would be terrible not to. So whatever you're up to this weekend, which is probably not very much, but just whatever it is, stay safe, stay well. He's Ross Kane. I'm Phil Dave. Thank you very much. We'll see you on Monday at midday. Bye.